Chapter 156 Brothers in Difficulty, Don't Forget. Even in death, you must not forget. Zhuemo woke up and slowly opened his eyes. The first thing he noticed was the pain. It was like the bones in his body had been rattled. Just the slightest of movements had caused bone-aching pain. He instantly became docile and motionless. The familiar fragrance of medicine entered his nose. He instantly realized where this was. Oh, his life was really bad. It seemed every time he attended a fight, he would enter the fragrant ginger yard. It looked like he was quite heavily wounded this time. Cough, shitty, you're awake. Suddenly, a familiar voice came from his right. Eldest Shixiang? Zhuemo instinctively turned his neck to look right. Just as he moved, he couldn't help but inhale sharply. So painful. He moved his head with great difficulty. When he saw eldest Shixiang on a bed not far away at his right, he was instantly shocked. Lying on the bed where eldest Shixiang's voice came from was a person whose body was entirely bound in bandages with only his eyes left uncovered. Eldest Shixiang, is it you? Zhuemo asked with uncertainty. This person who was wrapped up like a mummy, was he really the courageous and invincible eldest Shixiang? The person under the bandages responded. It really was him. He said, "You've been unconscious the longest. We were all very worried about you." Eldest Shixiang, who wounded you like this? Zhuemo asked in disbelief. Haha, I fought with Gu Rongping, he did this. Wei Sheng's tone was relaxed. Zhuemo still didn't quite believe it. That little white face shouldn't be this strong. He isn't much better off. Wei Sheng smiled. In the end, I managed to slice him 12 times in succession. Hearing this, Zhuemo sweated. Sliced 12 times, even if that little white face was a big carrot, he would have been sliced into a toothpick. However, he felt that this was expected. In the same generation, how could there be anyone who could overpower eldest Shixiang to the point he could not retaliate? Seeing eldest Shixiang worse off than he was, his mood, which had been down due to his injuries, instantly became much better. He felt this way even though Wei Sheng was Zhuemo's respected and loved eldest Shixiang. Brothers in difficulty. Suddenly, Wei Sheng suddenly shouted in Zhuemo's direction, Luo Shidi, are you better today? Zhuemo unconsciously turned his face to the left. There was a bed on his left. Luo Li was lying on top. Even though it wasn't as severe as eldest Shixiang, but his expression was withered, his complexion pale. It was easy to see he was seriously injured. So there wasn't just one brother in difficulty. Zhuemo was struck. When Luo Li looked at Zhuemo, his expression was slightly unnatural. Zhuemo immediately remembered that the person who had wounded Luo Li had been himself. That wondrous state had disappeared, but Zhuemo clearly remembered what had happened during that time. If Zhuemo's face could move, his expression right now would certainly be extremely unnatural. Due to the fact he had been in a strange state, he had performed beyond his abilities. Even if he was completely healed and set up the 72-child formation Skyring Moonchime formation again, he might not be able to successfully perform Moonchime Soundstorm successfully 1 in 10 times. Is Shixiang better? Luo Li avoided Zhuemo's eyes and asked Wei Sheng. His mentality was much better than before. Even though Wei Sheng had once been his sword servant, but right now he was Wukong Sword Sect's eldest Shixiang. Greater power meant a greater status. The rules of the sect had always been so. Now, no one in Wukong Sword Sect would doubt Wei Sheng Shixiang's strength. Facing Zhuemo, Luo Li still had some desire to compete, but facing Wei Sheng he had completely submitted. Much better. Wei Sheng's tone was nothing like that of a seriously wounded patient, extremely optimistic. After a bit of time, I'll probably heal. The three of them were all severely wounded, unable to move as they laid on the bed. At the beginning there was a slight barrier between Zhuemo and Luo Li, but now that they were in the same predicament, their relations gradually improved. After a while, they conversed freely. Before, Zhuemo hadn't liked Luo Li. Upon further acquaintance, he found that Luo Li was not as bad as he had imagined. Quite the opposite, in fact. Even though he would unconsciously reveal the pride ingrained in his bones, his personality was straightforward and he was a forthright person. The two of them had fought 2 times. Both times, each of them had been seriously wounded. To a certain degree, their relationship was forged in fighting. The two of them were also full of admiration towards each other's strength. Nothing needed to be said of Luo Li to Zuemo. Right now, Zuemo had become one of the hottest people in Dongfu. At the end, he had fought 1-on-5, and it had turned into a legend in Dongfu. No one had saw the 1-on-5 fight, but everyone had clearly seen the terrifyingly gigantic hole in the Great Pine Pavilion. Zuemo knew how much his strength was really worth. Each time eldest Shixiang and Luo Li mentioned this matter, his heart was extremely insecure. In his perspective, Luo Li's strength was much stronger than his. Suddenly remembering this matter, Zuemo couldn't help but ask in curiosity, "Shixiang, that day, I seemed to see a woman in front of you. Who was that?" Luo Li was instantly slightly embarrassed. He muttered, "That's my sword spirit." So Shidi is walking the road of spirit manifestation. Wei Xing instantly realized. Seeing Zuemo not understanding, and then remembering this guy did not study what he should be, he painstakingly explained. There are many ways to cultivate the sword, many of them strange. Sword spirit is one of these. It means to nurture the sword essence to mate it into a spirit. However, he couldn't help but glance at Luo Li several times. I really didn't see that Luo Shixiang's emotions are pretty sensitive. Seeing Zuemo still not understanding, he said with a smile, "People that cultivate a sword spirit mostly have sensitive feelings. This way of the sword uses emotion to enter this path of the sword. When the sword spirit is forming, it needs to use emotion as the guide for the sword spirit to take form." Zuemo finally understood. Luo Li instantly blushed red. Our sect is a sword sect. Shidi must not slack off on the sword scriptures. Wei Xing said to Zuem, aha. Zuemo unconcernedly responded. He suddenly thought about the Kunlun Jade Scroll, and couldn't help but ask, "This sword test conference, has the rankings come out? Who entered the top 10? Wei Xing shook his head. Wounded like this, how can we know the situation outside? Zuemo turned towards Luo Li. Luo Li also shook his head. Zuemo could only say, "I'll ask when Xiaoguo and the others come next time." These past few days, it had been Xiaoguo, Li Yingfeng and the others who had been looking after the three of them. The sect elders were not seen. The three of them didn't know the ranking for the sword test conference had become a great problem. Zuemo's last move had disrupted the competition. Tiansong Zi saw that the Great Pine Pavilion had been damaged to such a degree had instantly stopped the competition. No competitor had opposed the decision. Having seen the terrifying collision with their own eyes, they didn't have any more interest in competing. Many of the Xiozha that rushed to the explosion had been left shocked, dazed, and withered. What was even more unexpected was that the time those people spent with a low mood was much longer than others had imagined. Their elders started to become worried. From this, it could be seen just how much of a blow that world-shattering collision had given them. For Tiansong Zi, who was hosting the sword test conference, there were more things that caused a headache for him. He could slowly fix the damage in the Great Pine Pavilion, but he must immediately solve the problem of the sword test conference's ranking. This was an extremely troublesome problem. Because the competition had been stopped in the middle, the number of people in the Great Pine Pavilion was far more than 10. These competitors were also all people of some strength. Wei Xing and Gu Rongping had both been wounded and became unconscious. The other spectacular competitor, Zuemo, also was seriously wounded and unconscious. It was not easy to rank the first 10. The reason that the 4 of Pei Yuan ran and the others were absent was due to this matter. Who could imagine a group of Jindan experts in a room shouting furiously like a group of children? Some slammed the table, others soared, some bounced back and forth. It was very boisterous. After Pei Yuan ran and the others left Dongfu Hall, even if they were of astounding cultivation, there was tiredness on their faces. Su was lying on the bed. Even now, there was a layer of black gauze over her face. "Do you feel better today?" Lin Qian asked attentively. Su nodded and didn't speak. Lin Qian's expression was full of self-blame. He took out a jade bottle and said gently, "I didn't think you would be wounded this time. It is my fault." This youth Dan will be very beneficial for you. Consume it quickly. Sue's body gently shook. Her gaze stared at the jade bottle in Lin Qian's hand. She had heard of the name Youth Dan. It was an extremely rare and expensive Ling Dan, especially suited for female Xiao to consume. It had great benefits for cultivation. Using it to heal, she felt it was a great waste. Who really are you? Sue's gaze moved from the jade bottle to Lin Qian as she asked coldly. She had heard the name of the Youth Dan, but she was also very clear about its rarity. Heart Lake Sword sect might be the top-tier sect in Sky Moonjia, but such a high-grade Ling Dan such as Youth Dan wasn't something they could possess. She had always assumed that Lin Qian was a disciple of one of the elders, but when he took out the Youth Dan, she suddenly realized that Lin Qian definitely couldn't be a disciple of her sect. Then the other question was, where did the sect token in Lin Qian's hand come from? What goal did he have? Sue's gaze was like an arrow. Lin Qian laughed lightly, his expression normal. He gently put the Youth Dan in front of Sue. I am not Shimmy's enemy. He then asked, the matter I asked last time, does Shimmy have the result? Seeing the calmness on Lin Qian's face, Sue hesitated and shook her head, saying, it's not him. Lin Qian did not seem surprised at this result. He nodded. Many thanks, Shimmy. Shimmy, please relax and rest. As to forging your sword, you can give it to this one. I will not disappoint Shimmy. Finishing, he left. Sue looked at the figure that disappeared outside the door and felt this person was even more mysterious. In a distant mountain valley of Linging sect, there were two people speaking. It was Chong Heng and the yellow-faced man. The expressions of the two seemed untouched, but their complexion and alertness was much worse than before the competition. The two of them had not escaped unscathed. They had been wounded to various degrees. This is what you need. The yellow-faced man handed over a jade scroll. Chong Heng took over the jade scroll. Without looking, he put it away. The yellow-faced man saw Chong Heng didn't move and said in satisfaction, this is the first half. It's the deposit. After the matter is concluded, I'll give you the other half. I'll notify you of the general time. Chong Heng nodded and said expressionlessly, all right. Finishing, he turned and left. Chapter 157 Unexpected. When Zhou Mo, Wei Sheng, and Luo Li saw the sect leader and the other Shu, they instantly became obedient. Humph, you guys are very good. Went to attend a sword test conference and not one of you came back whole. Feng Rong, who had been working tirelessly, saw these three and her already bad mood became even worse. The responsibility to heal the three had all landed on her head. The three shook in fear. Feng Rong might be the youngest of the sect elders, but in reality, the outcome to having offended fourth Shirgu was very bad. Pei Yuan ran and the others did not have good complexions. Everyone that was dragged to Dong Fu Hall had to shout and sort out the mess. Naturally were not in good moods. Even more, these three disciples were seriously wounded. The expenses were very high. All right. Yen Le came out to smooth things over. Really, you guys got yourselves into this state. As your elders, how can we not worry? You have to remember there is no meaning in one victory or defeat. As long as you are alive, you always have the chance to take it back. But if you don't have a life, what does victory mean? The three murmured. Pei Yuan Rant's expression relaxed slightly and took over. Your Shu is right. You have to remember this. You are the hope of the sect. In the future, the prosperity of the sect rests on you. If you do not take care of your body, you will fail the teachings the sect has given you. Haha, but you guys were very good this time. The rankings for the sword test conference have been finalized. The situation was special, so the final rankings were calculated using the Jin Dan Elder's judgment. All three of you are in the top 10. Wei Sheng 2nd, Zhou Mo 3rd, Luo Li 7th. Luo Li couldn't help ask, didn't we lose and were unconscious? Pei Yuan Ran narrated the situation after the sword test conference had ended before Wei Sheng and Luo Li understood. When they looked at Zhou Mo, it was like they were looking at a monster. This guy was the true criminal for the ending of the competition. Zhou Mo's head was dazed, his eyes was blank. Kuan Luan Introductory Formation Jade Scroll. He had given up hope on obtaining it for a long time now, but the sect leader was telling him that he was ranked third. This meant that the Jade Scroll was basically his. Who's first? Wei Xing asked. It's Gu Rongping. Pei Yuan Ran glanced at Wei Xing. Afraid the other couldn't bear it, he explained. Gu Rongping's level might not be as high as you, but he suppressed you. If it really was truly a matter of life and death, the likelihood of him winning is bigger. In reality, he still had something he didn't say. Heart Lake Sword Sect was the first-ranked major sect in Sky Moonjia. How could the others not give them some face? That's right. Wei Xing nodded, unconcerned. Gu Rongping really is the strongest opponent I encountered. I learned many things this time. Seeing Wei Xing's mind was so open, Pei Yuan Ran was very comforted. Luo Li wanted to speak when he suddenly saw Xen Yen Sherbua stare with icy eyes at Zuemo. He instantly didn't dare to speak. Did Xen Yen Sherbua have some opinion about Zuemo Shidi? He was slightly puzzled. Rationally, Zua Shidi's performance this time could be labeled spectacular. Why wasn't Xen Yen Sherbua satisfied? He peeked at Zuemo and found the other's eyes were unfocused as though the other had wandered away. These few days, the three of them had grown their relationship. Luo Li couldn't help but panic on Zuemo's behalf. He wanted to speak to remind him, but the words shrunk back when it came to his mouth. Xen Yen Sherbua's gaze was really sharp, even sharper than a flying sword. Zuemo gradually came out of his shock and instinctively asked, "What time can we get the prizes?" Once the words came out, the four elders stopped speaking, their faces becoming dark. Zuemo finally came back to his body. Seeing the sect leader and others have faces blacker than the bottom of a pot, he shook. Not good. The four of them stared unkindly at Zuemo, causing him to have goosebumps. No one expected the first person to break the pressuring mood was Xen Yen Sherbua. However, once he opened, it was like the wind of the tundra sweeping through the room, the temperature freezing. Good. Very good. Extremely good. After 3 good. Without another word, Xen Yen Sherbua turned and left. Pei Yuan Ran and Yen Le did not have good expressions. The two turned and left. Shifeng Rong's face was black. Her eyes looked as though she was going to skin Zuemo alive. Zuemo was very good at deciphering people's expressions. Seeing Master's expression, the bad feeling inside shot up, and he murmured, "Master, very good." Shifeng Rong snorted coldly, turning to leave. Zuemo was dumbstruck. The suddenly change also scared Wei Xing and Luo Li. When had the two ever seen the elders so angry? Wei Xing hesitated before asking, "Shidi, what did you do?" "Yeah." Luo Li couldn't resist. "Everyone's angry at you. You're going to die." Anyways, Zuemo heard it. This guy's words were full of laughter at his misfortunes. However, he wasn't in the mood to attend to that guy. Thinking about the good that Xen Yen Sherbua had said, his heart trembled. Just defending Master, his days would be difficult. This was good. In one stroke, he had completely offended all the elders, and from the tone, it seemed to be pretty severe. What made Zuemo even more depressed was that, up until now, he didn't even understand where the problem was. Theoretically, his display this time wasn't bad. Zuemo's heart shook. Only Wei Xing looked thoughtful. Zuemo had no solution to the anger his master, Shu, and the sect leader held. However, he was extremely easygoing. Knowing that it was useless to worry, he didn't think about it any further. Thinking about the Kunlun introductory formation jade scroll that was going to be in his hands soon, the worry in his heart was washed away. As Shifeng Rong had come back from Dongfu Hall, the speed the three healed had increased greatly. After a few days, they could all stand and move. They only needed to calm down and rest for a while before they fully recovered. Already sick of lying on the bed, the three went to take a breather outside. On the mountain peak, the wind was very strong. The three of them enjoyed it immensely. Only after being stuck on the bed for so long did they know how pleasurable it was to have the cold wind blowing like this. Looking at the figures hard at work below, Wei Xing sighed, "Our sect is going to prosper." The mood of Wukong Sword Sect had transformed completely. Along the mountain valleys and in the woods, there were always figures of Wukong Sword Sect disciples working hard. All the disciples' eyes were full of admiration and respect when they saw the three of them. The present Wukong sword sect was full of vitality and growth. The faces of the disciples were filled with confidence and motivation that they never had before. In their eyes this vitality Wei Sheng and the others could see hope and longing for the future of their sect. As they walked through the mountain, the three of them deeply felt it. Luo Li nodded. Not bad. After this sword test conference, our sect's position in Sky Moon Jie is set. We are unable to be stopped. His eyes also flashed with yearning and hope. The prosperity of the sect meant the core disciples would get the greatest benefits. Cultivation was not an empty building. Without Jingshi, without materials, without spells, it was impossible to catch up to other people's cultivation speeds. Zuoremo was slightly unfocused, his thought wandering. Shidi, what are you thinking? Wei Sheng noticed Zuomo's absent-mindedness. Zuoremo focused and disguised. I'm calculating what time I can get the prize. Wei Sheng couldn't help but grin. Luo Li's face was also helpless. But he then asked curiously, you are so greedy, but why did you pick such a crappy item? There are so many good talismans. Wei Sheng and Luo Li had been very surprised by the jade scroll that Zuoremo had picked. They had all assumed that Zuoremo would pick a 4th-grade talismans, or at the very least, the finest 3rd-grade talisman. They hadn't expected that he would be a nondescript jade scroll. Zuoremo rolled his eyes. If you don't understand, don't talk. Luo Li was not angry. He remembered just how ugly the sect leader and the others looked when Zuoremo had requested the jade scroll, and managed to understand why the sect leader and the others were so angry. He met Wei Sheng's eyes and smiled. The two of them did not warn Zuoremo. Able to walk and move around, the three of them quickly moved back to their own residences. No one was willing to keep staying in fragrant ginger yard. Zuoremo moved back to his little west wind yard. Lazily soaking in the sun, when he occasionally raised his head, he could see Silly Bird on the rooftop posturing and showing off. If it was any other time, Zuoremo definitely would have thrown a stone. But there was a period of time since they saw each other. He found it was quite endearing. Xiaoguo was slicing up all kinds of fruits for Shixiang. Li Yingfeng Shiji had brought over the fruit. Li Yingfeng and Zuoremo were chatting. Haha, Shidi should quickly recover. This time, Shidi really shocked everyone. Everyone was left speechless when the ranking came out. Li Yingfeng suddenly thought of something. She smiled and said, Nan Men Yang entered Dong Fu Hall and became Yubai Shidi. As to Zhong Ming Yen, supposedly he is very seriously wounded. Shidi has become the most unwelcome person of Dong Qi Sword Sect. Dong Fu has been very boring recently. Everyone is healing. The prices of recovery medicines of the market have been skyrocketing. Zuoremo chomped at the fruit, the juices flying as he mumbled, Doesn't matter, it has nothing to do with me. Li Yingfeng smiled and said, Shidi needs to recover faster. There's many people that have come to my shop to ask if Shidi is taking orders. Shidi's reputation in formations has passed through all of Sky Moon Jie. Adding on your fame from the Golden Crow pill, there has been many people that have placed orders. Zuoremo became alert. No news other than this could make him more excited. Right now, he was penniless. The gigantic formation belt he set up in the sword test conference had almost taken up all the materials he had bought from the 100 treasure flying pavilion. The prize he had picked was a jade scroll, and there wasn't one piece of Jingshi there. So when he heard Li Yingfeng's news, his eyes became green. However, he thought and then shook his head. This has to wait until my wounds heal. That's natural. Li Yingfeng said. Shidi needs to rest and recover. When your body is good, you will have everything. Right? Elder Tiansong Zi suddenly announced 2 days ago that the local Xiuzhe who entered the top 100 are allowed to enter the secret realm. Secret realm? Zuomo's eyes were wide. He said in disbelief, Dong Fu Hall has a secret realm? They can bear to let us enter? Yes. Supposedly, it is to nurture the local younger generation. Elder Tiansong Zi especially made the decision, Li Yingfeng said. The two chatted for a bit more, but Zuoremo wasn't interested in chatting after Li Yingfeng's weighty news. Seeing the situation, Li Yingfeng left behind a lot of healing Lingdan and left. Seeing off Li Yingfeng, Zuoremo pushed Xiaoguo to practice the sword. He then sunk into thought. That same day, he made a decision: seclusion. Chapter 158 Seclusion. Mo did not impulsively decide to enter into seclusion training. The wounds on his body were mostly healed. The only thing left was rest. He needed to calm down and organize what he had gained and lost this time. This sword test conference, what he had encountered was much more than he had originally imagined. Only now did he have the time to think about it. There were many things he wanted to ask Pu Yao, like splitting his consciousness. But when he had first opened his eyes after the conference, he found that Pu Yao was in the middle of meditation. No matter how he shouted and tried to get Pu to respond, it was useless. He could only work it out himself. There were too many things that he needed to think deeply about. Another important reason that he decided to enter seclusion was the news that Li Yingfeng had about the secret realm. Mo knew what a secret realm was. Because he knew it was a rare opportunity, he decided to enter seclusion. There would be many opportunities inside the secret realm. If he was lucky and found some rare materials, he would really make a profit. But it would be wrong to think of the secret realm as his own Ling fields. Tianzong was allowing everyone to explore the secret realm, and this suggested that this secret realm was still unexplored, because if it had already been explored and all the rare materials had been taken away, then there would be no meaning to letting people explore it again. In the secret realm, other than the opportunities, what was more prominent was the danger. Secret realms were usually guarded by Yao beasts. The more rare and valuable the item, the stronger the guardian Yao beast was. Other than Yao beasts, what was harder to defend against was the hearts of people. Direct benefits meant direct conflicts of interest. Different from the competition of the Great Pine Pavilion, there would not be judges, no one calling a stop to fights. The fighting would be even more straightforward and bare. If someone killed for treasure, Mo wouldn't be surprised. The world was like this. But it would be too stupid not to attend due to this risk. To be able to gain something, other than being lucky, it required strength. He might have been ranked third, but he knew his own strength. Luck was a major factor in his third-place ranking. The formations that he was skilled in were not suited for fighting. He guessed that the sect leader would have the 3 disciples from their sect to move together at that time. Undoubtedly, the 3-pronged trident of Wukong sword sect would form the strongest team. After them, it would probably be the team of Yu Bai and Nan Menyang. However, Mo didn't want to drag the others down. Other Xiuzhe may avoid them due to their strength, but those Yao beasts wouldn't recognize them. There were too many comprehensions from this sword test conference that he needed to organize. He also needed to do a thorough examination of his 5-colored pagoda. Pu Yao was always unreliable at the most crucial times, Mo thought irritably. Wukong Hall. He's in seclusion? Pei Yuanran said. Other than Xan Yen, who was still cold and unaffected, the other 2 appeared to have a headache. Yen Lu rubbed his forehead and said, he does need to seclude himself and ponder the experiences he received this time. Ponder what? Shifeng Rong was furious when it was mentioned. She clearly remembered the mockery from the audience. Ponder his formations? Or ponder how to make Jingshi? When she remembered how Mo had asked when the prizes were being awarded when he heard he was third, anger poured out of her heart. Why did she have such a greedy disciple who didn't like the sword? She couldn't help but peek at the cold second Shixiang, the anger in her heart growing even stronger. She knew that second Shixiang was really angry this time. This little ruffian, he made second Shixiang angry. Shifeng Rong raged. She decided to find a chance to sort out this lawless guy. No matter. Let him enter seclusion. Xan Yen suddenly opened to the surprise of everyone else. They had grown together from childhood and knew each other very well. It just wasn't Shifeng Rong who saw he was angry. Seeing Mo continuing to delve further into formations and not study what was right, Xan Yen did not stop him. According to their thinking, Xan Yen should personally have gone and grabbed Mo, severely punishing him and then guide him onto the proper path. Wukong Hall was a patch of silence. Everyone was shocked at Xan Yan's attitude. In the silence, Xan Yan's cold and pressuring voice echoed. I will make him understand why Sword Xiu can unite and lead the world of cultivation. Wukong Formation Sect. He can't go. The murderous and dark voice made the other three shudder. Sympathy came onto their faces. Zhuo Emo didn't know at this time just how decisive Xan Yen Sherbua's resolution was. He quickly received his prize. Just like he had imagined, this jade scroll came into his hands without a problem. His choice surprised many people. The sword test conference might have finished, but the events of the sword test conference still made waves in Dongfu. There were praises and mockery. Zhuo Mo's choice was the most unexpected choice in the top 10. Whatever this scalping zombie did always surprised people. Zhuo Mo was not concerned with this. With the jade scroll in his possess, he had no more cares, perfect for seclusion. He burrowed into the stone room and entered meditation. Inspecting the situation inside his body, he found his state was bad. The wounds he received this time were much more severe than he had imagined. Under Master's care, the channels in his body had basically healed, but compared to him at his peak, they had shrunk. Zhuo Mo decided to nurture of his channels. It was not difficult to nurture channels. It was only using Ling power to slowly permeate the channels and reawaking the vitality inside. However, it was a detailed job and especially demanded patience. Luckily, Zhuo Mo was not in a rush. Slowly nurturing the channels, he took the chance and examined his own body in detail. The Ling power would be absorbed by the Mo matrix automatically when it came close to him. The Mo matrix would automatically take in Ling power. What Zhuo Mo marveled at was that the Mo matrix, other than automatically taking in Ling energy, it was like a filter and automatically purified the power. Tempering Ling power was a step that was unavoidable in cultivation. Ling power that was not purified was not only unable to be used, but could also harm the body. But with the marvelous Mo matrix, Zhuo Mo did not need to spend time on purification. The problem of storing Ling power was still unresolved. The Ling power would be absorbed through the Mo matrix into the body, circulate through the channels, and dissipate inside the body. The greatest storage place inside his body for Ling power was his dantian. Compared to the Ling power that was absorbed into his body, it could only be considered a small pond. The remaining Ling power was unable to be stored. They flowed along the channels and dissipated into the body. Normal Xiuzhen needed to spend long periods of time to absorb Ling power, tempering it over and over to purify it. It would take a long time to fill the dantian. But Zhuo Mo felt the problem was not this. If a Xiuzhen was a container, and the amount of things this container could hold became smaller, then it definitely was a problem with the container. In other words, something was likely wrong with the dantian. His thoughts were very clear. As expected, when he focused his attention on his dantian, he finally understood why his cultivation would increase so slowly. The dantian was like a pool, and the Ling power the water inside the pool. However, this pool was marvelous in that, as the water rose, the walls of the pool would also rise. That way, the Ling power stored inside the body would increase. However, the problem was with the Mo matrix. He didn't know what that asshole, Pu Yao, was thinking. One region of the Mo matrix coincidentally passed through his dantian. It was like there were two holes in the wall of a pool, and once the water inside the pool rose above the height of the holes, the water would be lost. His Ling power was spilling out through the holes. These two holes were not small, so even though there was water constantly added to the pool, the height of water inside the pool would not rise. Zhuo Mo couldn't help but grimace. He really had tasted the bitterness of low cultivation in the sword test conference. His cultivation was not enough. It meant that he had no strength to face someone else in the open. Tricks may be hard for people to deal with, but if he used them too many times, it wouldn't work. Damn it. Even though he knew what the problem was, he didn't know what to do. Changing the dantian wasn't something a person like him who was just in Zhuji could accomplish. Without any other solution, he could only open his eyes. He could only slowly work on the problem of cultivation. It was useless to rush. He could only comfort himself with the fact that finally knew what the problem was. Now he only had to slowly think of a solution. Compared to the pause in his Ling power, his consciousness had rising quickly, and without his knowledge, he had broken through to fifth breath. In the void above his sea of consciousness, there was another star. In reality, Before the sword test conference, Zhuo didn't have many good feelings about the embryonic breathing spiritual cultivation. It may have been able to increase Ling power, but its primary effect was strengthening the consciousness. For Zhuo, the consciousness had been far less important than Ling power. Even more, it was strong in cultivating his consciousness, but there was no way to use his consciousness. In a person as pragmatic as Zhuo's eyes, it was useless. But now, Zhuo placed much more importance on embryonic breathing spiritual cultivation than any other scripture or spell. That strange and indescribable state, the ethereal star dust, the feeling as though it was a part of his body. Zhuo looked at the 5-colored pagoda in his hand. A feeling rose as though it was connected to his blood. The little pagoda was like a part of his body, intimate and familiar. The other reason he entered seclusion was for the 5-colored pagoda. In the fight during that last great clash, he had been severely wounded, and the 5-colored pagoda had also received severe damage. He had Master to help heal him, but only he could work on the damage of the 5-colored pagoda. The 5-colored pagoda was dim and dull, and had cracks over the body. If it wasn't for the feeling of connectedness that existed between them, Zhuo would be suspicious that this wasn't his 5-colored pagoda. Feeling the weakness passed on by the 5-colored pagoda, Zhuo couldn't help but reach out and caress the 5-colored pagoda. He closed his eyes, his mind sinking into the 5-colored pagoda. Entering the 5-colored pagoda, he jumped in fright. Inside the 5-colored pagoda, the 5 balls of 5-element essence were all dim, so faint that they appeared to be able to vanish at any moment. The ball of consciousness weakly floated in the middle of the 5 balls of elemental essence without any of the liveliness of before. If the 5-colored pagoda had been the beginnings of a 5-element world before, then this 5-element world was now on the edge of disintegration. Zhuo's expression was terrible. The situation was worse than he had imagined. Chapter 159 Gains the power of the 5-colored pagoda had left a deep impression on Zhuo. What was most precious was the feeling of connectedness as though it was his arm or finger. He had never felt the same with other talismans. It was hard to determine just how much he had imprinted on it, but it was now the most powerful talisman in Zhuo's possession. In Zhuo's eyes, it wasn't just a talisman. It could control the formations. Didn't that mean that he had an extra set of hands? He also had a feeling inside that if the 5-colored pagoda really was ruined, he would also be affected. There were never such beneficial and fortuitous incidents in this world. If it was connected deeply to him as though it were his arms, then if his arms broke, how could he be unaffected? No matter the cost, he needed to fix the 5-colored pagoda. Zhuo gritted his teeth. He took out all the materials from his ring and threw them inside the pagoda. The 5-colored pagoda seemed extremely hungry. When the materials left his hands, they were sucked away. One by one, the materials entered the 5-colored pagoda and were deconstructed and converted into the 5 elemental essences. Zhuo saw the materials flow like water into the 5-colored pagoda and felt pain. These materials were all bought with large sums of jingshu. Now they had all been fed to the 5-colored pagoda. However, what comforted him slightly was this solution was extremely effective. The cracks on the body of the 5-colored pagoda slowly disappeared with speed visible to the naked eye. He could feel the 5-element world inside the 5-colored pagoda being supplied by large amounts of 5-element essence and gradually stabilize. But the empty ring left Zhuo with a feeling of heartache. Competing in the sword test conference had completely cost him all his wealth. He had an impulse to spit blood. What he wanted to spit blood at even more was the 5-colored pagoda hadn't fully recovered even as the last bit of material was absorbed. Compared to the pagoda's original condition, it was still much dimmer in color. Heavens, how large of a quantity of materials would be needed to completely repair it? How much jingshu would that require? Zhuo didn't just have any jingshu, and he had no materials left at all. It's been a long time since he was so poor. Just at this time, a ball of substance that appeared to be gray mud flew out of the 5-colored pagoda into Zhuo's palm. Zhuo stilled. This was the first time he had seen the 5-colored pagoda spit something out. Quickly, the five-colored pagoda passed on information that allowed him to understand what this gray mud was. Everything belonged to the five elements. This was an extremely broad generalization. In this world, there were still a few things that did not belong to the five elements. The little ball of gray mud in Zhuamo's hands would be the remnants after the five-colored pagoda deconstructed the materials into the five elemental energies. These remains did not belong inside the five elements, so it was not absorbed by the five-colored pagoda and was pushed out. The corners of Zhuamo's eyes jerked. Eat mine, drink mine, and now shitting on my hand. The brat, he was lawless. Burning in rage, he raised his hand to throw the gray mud at the five-colored pagoda. The five-colored pagoda seemed to know Zhuamo was angry and skipped away to dodge. But the hand Zhuamo raised up suddenly stopped, the anger inside disappearing without a trace. It did not belong inside the five elements. Right, this stuff didn't belong inside the five elements. Five elements contain all. There were extremely small number of things that were not. And without an exception these items were all extremely rare. These days, what did rarity mean? One word: expensive. Zhuamo suddenly became excited. That's right, the rarer it was, the more expensive it was. The gray mud in his hands was not inside the five elements and definitely should be valuable. Thinking about it, he carefully scraped the mud off his hands into a jade bottle and then put the jade bottle inside a sandalwood box before putting it inside the ring. Sometime in the future, he should inquire to how much jingsher the gray mud was worth. The five-colored pagoda temporarily stabilized. Zhuamo's mood was better now that he found another use for the five-colored pagoda. Looking at the five-colored pagoda, he was reminded of his consciousness and the stars in his consciousness had slowly scattered. However, when he inspected his consciousness, there had not been any change. That was normal. With the slow speed that the stars shed off stardust, it would take a long time for the stardust to spread into the entirety of his consciousness. Zhuamo speculated a large amount of stardust was needed to create evident change. Of course, it could also just be his dream. Maybe there would not be a change at all. He quickly threw the problem of the consciousness to one side. Formations. His abilities with formations had surprised people and also increased his confidence. Whenever he thought about the peerless power of the moonchime soundstorm of the Skyring moonchime formation, he still couldn't help but become excited. 1 against 5, each person multiple times stronger than him. Even if it was only one move, and it was the five-colored pagoda controlling it, even if it was a fight inside the formation belt. Even so, that battle was something that he would never have been able to imagine before. Even now, he still felt it was like a dream. If he had a deeper understanding of formations, if his control could be stronger, if he had been more careful in setting the formations, a fight like that could appear again, it could be copied. Even more, he now had an introductory formation jade scroll from Kunlun. Suddenly, Zhuamo was full of confidence about the future. Xiaogua absent-mindedly practiced the sword. Shixiang was in seclusion. For some reason, when Shixiang was absent, her motivation to practice the sword was much less. This was not right, Xiaogua told herself. But the sword in her hand was still so heavy, and her steps weak. You have to concentrate when practicing the sword. A voice came from behind her. Xiaogua's movement stopped. Turning, her apple face was full of joyful surprise. Shixiang. Zhuamo tapped Xiaogua's head, taking on the mannerism of a Shixiang to lecture, not concentrating on practicing the sword. Do you want to be disciplined? And, look at your sword, so weak, it only has the appearance. Seeing Shixiang continue on, spit flying, Xiaogua's eyes couldn't help but smile into 2 crescent moons. After lecturing Xiaogua, Zhuamo laid down on the lounge chair lazily, without any awareness of being a role model. Silly Bird stared disdainfully at Zhuamo and continued to preen her own feathers. The feeling of the sun on his body was so good. Shixiang, you finished your seclusion? Xiaogua timidly asked. Oh yes, it's done. Zhuamo stretched lazily, closing his eyes and enjoying the warm sunshine. He had gained greatly from this seclusion. Kunlun was really Kunlun. Each time it was mentioned, Zhuemo was full of awe for this legendary sect. He had rejoiced countless times that he had chosen this jade scroll and how wise he was. Just an introductory formation jade scroll, but it contained so many kinds of formations. The first time he read the jade scroll, he was completely stunned. In his eyes, this jade scroll had the qualifications to be called the complete book of basic formations. Zhuemo could be considered to be a hobbyist in collecting jade scrolls, but he had never thought that a jade scroll could contain such rich and comprehensive content. In comparison, the jade scrolls of the sect were so simple and rough it was embarrassing. Inside the formation, there were more than 200 types of basic formations, and there were all kinds of analyses. These analyses that came from the Kunlun formation experts had broadened Zhuemo's vision. All of his own ideas that he had been very proud of had been encompassed in the breadth of the jade scroll. Just a few phrases on each formation were sharp as a knife, pinpointing the essence of each profound and cryptic formation. Each formation was easily deconstructed and their relation to each other was revealed with clarity. Zhuemo was entranced. This wasn't learning, it was a peerless pleasure. The moment he picked up the jade scroll, he could not stop himself from delving in. Without sleep or rest, nor drink and food, he muttered to himself like he was sleep-talking and laughed excitedly like he was insane. When he finished reading the last analysis in the jade scroll, he was extremely depressed. An introductory jade scroll could have such power. What he gained was multiple times what he had imagined. He was like a child that had been swimming in a pond and suddenly saw the ocean. Is Shixiang going to seclusion again? Xiaogua asked timidly. Oh no, there's no Jingshi to get in seclusion. Zhuemo lazily said. He suddenly thought of a question and asked, where are eldest Shixiang and Luo Li Shixiang? What are they busy with? Hearing that Zhuemo wasn't going back into seclusion, Xiaogua's eyes turned to crescents. Eldest Shixiang and Luo Li Shixiang are all in seclusion. Zhuemo made a sound of acknowledgement. He wasn't surprised. Dongfu. The sword test conference had finished. All the experts went back to their own homes. Dong Fu instantly became less lively. Of course, compared to the Dong Fu of the past, it was much more prosperous. This year's sword test conference had caused Dong Fu to stand out in the 13 primary towns. Not long in the future, it would be the time Tiansong Zi promised to open the secret realm. Even though they could not attend, but many still stayed, especially those who desperately needed certain hard-to-obtain materials. What secret realms were most famous for was producing all kinds of treasures. Larger material merchants also sent people to wait. Zhuemo rode Silly Bird and headed straight to the 100 Treasures Flying Pavilion. There were many more people in the 100 Treasures Flying Pavilion, which surprised him. Coming for the second time, he was not as cautious as before. Welcoming Zhuemo was still the same storekeeper as last time. When he saw Zhuemo, he congratulated, "Congratulations, congratulations. Mr. Zhuo really is extraordinary. That last attack made my heart stop." Then he pushed his voice lower and said, "Hee, many thanks to Mr. Zhuo." Zhuemo stilled. "How so?" Hee, Mr. Zhuo had great skill to forge the 5-colored pagoda into a soul-tethered talisman. Our store also has benefited. Zhuemo finally understood. However, what he realized was not the increase in the customers, but why the 5-colored pagoda was so powerful now. So it had become his soul-tethered talisman. To a guy like him who had made deep study of talismans, how could he not know soul-tethered talismans? Soul-tethered talisman. He was slightly excited but did not show it on his face. Just like usual, he grasped the main point. That's great. In the future, give me a bit of a discount. Hearing this, the storekeeper could only laugh along. Zhuemo was not concerned, asking, "Is Miss Su here?" "Yes, please come with me." The storekeeper hurriedly reached forward to usher him, clearly having already received orders. Chapter 160 Intense Fire. Dan Su had been waiting for Zhuemo for a long time. Even though she was uncertain that Zhuemo would aid her since she had not helped Zhuemo like originally planned. She waited rather than going to Wukong Mountain due to her trust in Lin Qian. For some unknown reason, this extremely mysterious youth instilled her with confidence. "When do we begin?" Zuemo asked. "I'm not in a hurry." A jade bottle appeared on Su's hand. "This is Fort Chao's Intense Fire Dan. Consume it first, I'll help you stabilize the medicine power." He hesitated but still took the jade bottle. Opening it, he could feel a wave of heat flood out of the jade bottle. Lying inside were beads that seemed to be carved out of red jade. The stalagmite fire was a cold fire. The fire power in this intense fire Dan was clearly hot fire. The two were of completely different attributes. It would most likely be troublesome to merge them together. However, Zuemo still decided to try because he had consumed the Golden Crow pills which contained the Golden Crow fire, which was also a hot fire. The two sat in the seclusion room with Su positioned behind Zuemo. Intense Fire Dan was made from underground lava. It contains lava earth fire and is extremely domineering. "You have to be careful." Su did not waste words, putting her hand on Zuemo's back. Zuemo shoved an Intense Fire Dan into his mouth. Once the Intense Fire Dan entered his mouth, it turned to an extremely hot stream of energy. This hot stream was boiling like it was lava. Zuemo felt as though it would burn through his body. As expected, it truly was domineering. Not daring to slack off, Zuemo hurriedly channeled Ling power to surround this bright red hot stream. If he allowed this hot stream to run rampant through his body, it would quickly damage his channels. Zuemo's skin that was exposed to the air suddenly became bright red like glowing hot metal. Su didn't dare to slack off either, channeling Ling power to carefully permeate Zuemo's body. Zuemo detected Ling power entering from his back. He did not panic but carefully inspected it. His consciousness was extremely large. Since his body was definitely his home field, he easily saw through Su's Ling power. Such a strange Ling power. Zuemo couldn't help but be interested. Su's Ling power was not flowing like water, but like countless moving strands. It seemed to be composed of countless little fish into schools and was extremely unique. He remembered that Su's sword scripture was magnetic power. Was this the trick to it? Zuemo noted it down. Su could never dream that as she helped Zuemo digest the medicinal power, Zuemo managed to comprehend some of the intricacies of her Ling power. It really wasn't that she was inattentive, but Zuemo's present consciousness was far outside of the expectations of normal people. Who would think a Zhuji would have such a large consciousness? Zuemo finally experienced just how great the gap was between Ningmai and Zhuji. Su's Ling power was not fierce, but it was endless. When the domineering Intense Fire Dan was surrounded by this Ling power, it was unable to move. Zuemo knew it was time for him to act. What Su could do was help him stabilize the medicinal power, but only he could process it. He didn't immediately let his Ling power stream over, but used his consciousness to inspect the strong and domineering medicinal power. Su carefully controlled her Ling power. Since it was inside Zuemo's body, her control was greatly decreased. After a moment, Zuemo's Ling power was still motionless without any intentions of going forward. Why wasn't he doing anything? She furrowed her brows. She didn't understand why Zuemo was procrastinating. Did he not know how to process medicinal power? Just as she felt puzzled, Zuemo's Ling power suddenly moved. Two thin tendrils of Ling power charged at the medicinal power she was stabilizing. Just this little bit of Ling power? She was slightly discontent. What was this guy doing? Using this little bit of Ling power, how long would it take to process all the medicinal power? She securely held onto the medicinal power, but the medicinal power of the Intense Fire Dan was extremely domineering. Even though it was caught in the grasp of her Ling power, but it was like the wild beast in a cage and struggled to break free. Her Ling power was slowly being consumed, even if the rate was not fast. At this time, another 2 streams of Ling power went to the back of the medicinal power. Still not enough. Su wanted to remind Zuemo that processing medicinal power required large amounts of Ling power, and for him not to skimp on Ling power at this time. Before she could speak, there was another 2 streams of Ling power. 2 streams. Another 2. In an extremely short period of time, Zuemo's Ling power turned to 80-something slender streams of Ling power. Su gaped with wide eyes. What was this? The scene that took place was completely out of her imagination. The 80-something streams of Ling power were like extremely slippery earthworms that burrowed into the Ling power she had wrapped around the intense fire Dan. In the blink of an eye, the domineering and explosive medicinal power was cut by Zhuomo's tiny Ling power into 7 or 8 pieces. Looking at the domineering medicinal power slowly nibbled away by those tiny Ling power. No, it wasn't nibbling. Even though they moved bit by bit, but the processing speed was extremely fast. In a short moment, there was only a little bit of the medicinal power left. Quickly, all the medicinal power of the intense fire Dan had been processed. What remained after processing was a strand of extremely pure deep red fire power. Zhuo could feel the terrifying temperature contained in this tiny bit of fire power. It was all the essence of the entire intense fire Dan, and it was Zhuomo's target. It was rare to see such pure fire power, even if it was just a thread. Thinking about what Su had said, that the intense fire Dan was made from lava deep underground, it was no wonder that the fire power contained was so pure. In the descriptions of flames in the Yin Fire B chapter, all kinds of earth fire were not low-grade fire seeds. This pure thread of earth fire, to him, it was the best nourishment. Zhuo carefully controlled the stalagmite fire. As the stalagmite fire appeared, a dark and cold presence instantly spread. The milky white stalagmite fire quickly wrapped around the thread of deep red earth fire. One was yin and cold, the other was hot, yet the two strangely merged together. Zhuo could clearly feel that a wondrous change had occurred after the stalagmite fire had absorbed this thread of earth fire. However, limited by the amount of earth fire, the change could not be clearly seen. This surprised him. The trouble he had predicted did not occur. The entire merging process was so smooth he was shocked. There were 36 intense fire Dan. In other words, there were still 35 threads of earth fire. He began to feel anticipation. If all 36 threads of lava earth fire was merged into the stalagmite fire, what change would occur? Since there was no problems with the merging, Zhuo instantly increased his speed, throwing another intense fire Dan into his mouth. Su steadily stabilized her Ling power. Without her notice, a layer of fine sweat appeared on her forehead. She started to feel the burden. Zhuomo's speed was truly too fast, processing one pill after the next. She didn't have a chance to breathe and rest. She desired very much to stop, but she suppressed it. A Ningmai Xiuzhe asking a Zhuji to stop and rest, she couldn't say it. Even more, all she had to do was just stabilize the medicinal power. The Ling power consumed in processing was even greater. Zhuo hadn't relented, so how could she? She could only bear it. Up until now, she did not understand how Zhuo did all this. It should have been the person doing the processing who used up Ling power more quickly, but up until now, after more than 10 intense fire Dan, Zhuo did not show any signs of exhaustion. How was it possible? He was just a Zhuji Xiuzhe. Su gritted her teeth. Her Ling power was tightly wrapped around the medicinal power of the intense fire Dan. Zhuomo's Ling power needed to go through her Ling power in order to interact with the medicinal power, so she clearly perceived every movement of Zhuomo's Ling power. But even if she knew, she still found it impossible. Zhuo used several dozen streams of Ling power, each of which was controlled extremely delicately. It was clear that this was not the first time he had done this. This was the first time she had seen a processing method like Zhuomo's strange one. She couldn't help but admire Zhuomo's idea. To cut the medicinal power into multiple parts, dividing before processing. It could greatly increase the efficiency. What shocked her was each of the tiny streams of Ling power were as sharp as knives. Their power may have been small, but they could easily cut the medicinal power into little pieces. She had more experience and her cultivation was much higher than Zhuomo's, so she naturally understood how he accomplished it. He only needed to find the weakest spot in the medicinal power to achieve this result. But the crux of the problem was, how could Zhuo be so fast and accurate in finding the most fragile place on the medicinal power? Her Ling power was wrapped around the medicinal power, but she knew she couldn't do such a thing. Not just her, even her Shixianggu Rongping definitely could not do such a delicate task. This was probably Zhuomo's secret. Having thought it through, the shock in Sue's mind gradually faded. Each person had their own skills. A person that displayed such talent at the sword test conference like Mo must have some unique talent. Her mind calming down, she started to admire Mo's performance. Mo's fine control of Ling power truly could live up to the word performance. Several dozen strands of Ling power were being controlled according to his wishes, cooperating among themselves easily like an army. They all had their individual tasks combining to create the larger picture. The explosive and domineering medicinal power in comparison was like a gigantic beast which only looked fierce yet had no substance, and was easily dismembered. The entire process was fast and accurate, clean and crisp without any unnecessary movements. Seeing them move was a pleasure. However, this also exposed that Mo's Ling power was not strong. It was beneficial in formations to have strong fine control over Ling power, but for sword scriptures, there were not many benefits. In a short period of time, Sue made her conclusion. In her eyes, Mo was still strong, but this strength was different than others. His weakness was also clear. In other words, Mo's strength could only be expressed under certain conditions. She thought about the sword test conference and the shocking formation that Mo had set up. Hadn't he created an environment where he could use his strength? She couldn't help but shake her head. In her eyes, a strength like Mo was superficial. He had too many limitations. Sword cultivation was the correct path. No matter the circumstances, sword shio could grasp their own fate. Thinking about it, she strengthened her resolve to cultivate the sword, full of anticipation towards the sword billet that was to be forged. 6 hours later, the last intense fire Dan landed in his stomach and quickly turned into a thread of lava-earth-fire. As the 36th thread of lava-earth-fire merged, the stalagmite fires suddenly changed. Chapter 161 Forging the Sword Billet. The stalagmite fire suddenly grew as though oil had been poured on the fire. The flame jumped in height, the presence increasing along with it. Mo couldn't help but become nervous. The most important moment had come. The large stalagmite fire spat like a furious beast, the cold and explosive presence spreading into the surroundings. Even Mo's channels were affected, feeling like they were pierced by needles. Sue hurriedly took back her Ling power. At this time, her Ling power was unable to help Mo, and would only distract him. She opened her eyes and saw Mo trembling as he sat in front of her. His forehead was covered in a layer of frost. Such a powerful cold fire. Sue was shocked inside. She stared nervously at Mo. If the merging this time failed, then there definitely wouldn't be any forging of her sword billet. Mo's heart was in the air. He had done what he could do. The rest was up to fate. As time passed, the restless stalagmite fires slowly quieted. The flame continued to shrink down and finally stabilized. The new stalagmite fire had formed. The present stalagmite fire was completely different compared to before. First, the size was about 1/3 larger than before. The biggest difference was the past stalagmite fire had been milky white, but the present stalagmite fire was surprisingly divided into 3 levels. The outermost layer was the same milky white flame as before, and the middle was a dark red flame. What surprised Mo the most was the black fire in the very center. Even though it was just a thread, it was still easily detectable. The 3 levels were clearly divided. The white flame was the stalagmite fire, the deep red flame was the lava-earth fire processed from the intense fire Dan, then what was the thread of black fire? Mo was slightly curious. After investigating, he finally understood. This extremely thin strand of black fire was actually the toxin which had infected the flame when he had processed the inky black lotus seed last time. If it wasn't for the abnormal change this time, he wouldn't have detected that his fire seed contained such a powerful toxin. What he hadn't even thought about was that toxins could turn into flames. The new flame was very different from the past stalagmite fire, and it felt different to control. The cold and yin energy had greatly decreased, but the shift between ice and fire was more easy to accomplish. What Mo did not understand at all was how the thread of black fire could be used. In this 3-leveled fire, the stalagmite fire was of the lowest grade, Then it was the lava earth fire. The highest grade was this black fire which Zwa Mo knew nothing about. Upon further thought, Zwa Mo felt it was normal. This thread of black fire was received through processing the 4th grade inky black lotus seed. That was 4th grade. The stalagmite fire was just a 2nd grade fire seed. He didn't hurry, slowly exploring the new flame. This was a completely new flame. Even the Yin Fire B chapter did not describe this kind of flame. This meant that Zwa Mo could only explore and understand on his own. Being deep in his investigation of the new flame, Zwa Mo forgot the passage of time. Su noticed Zwa Mo's body had resumed normal. The frost on his forehead had disappeared. She released a breath. Seeing that Zwa Mo seemed to be in meditation, she didn't hurry him, sitting down at the side to recover her Ling power. She had waited so long, she didn't care about a few more days. Zwa Mo sat for 3 days. When he opened his eyes again, other than exhaustion, there was a light that was unable to be disguised in his eyes. Su's heart relaxed. After another day, Zwa Mo had recovered to his optimal state and was finally going to start forging the sword billet. Zwa Mo did not allow Su to watch. If people watched, it was easy for the forger to be disturbed. He went into a seclusion room. The materials he needed had already been placed there. There was also a pile of Jingshi for Zwa Mo to recover his Ling power. Zwa Mo snickered. He naturally would take the Jingshi. Starting from now until he successfully forged the billet, he would stay inside the room. Su personally stood guard outside. He took out a jade scroll. The jade scroll contained all the formations that needed to be carved onto each sword billet as well as the method to forge the sword billet. There was nothing exceptional about the forging method. Zwa Mo only needed to glance through it to understand the process. His mind was quickly attracted to the 4 kinds of formations. These were 4 kinds of formations he had never seen before. Just this was enough for him to be full of interest. To allow the forger to be able to successfully finish the forging, the jade scroll had extremely detailed descriptions of the 4 formations. After he finished, Zwa Mo couldn't help but inhale sharply. A 4th grade formation. 4 kinds of completely different 4th grade formations. Now he understood why Su hadn't managed to find someone to forge the sword billet until now. Each sword billet needed to have a 4th grade formation carved onto it. 4 sword billets, 4 completely different kinds of 4th grade formations. Also, there was a strange connection between these 4 formations. Zwa Mo had thought that he had properly prepared, found that the difficulty in forging the sword billets was much higher than he had predicted. It was much higher. He helplessly shook his head. He really was going to take a loss on this job. This difficulty he could have asked for a much higher price. Zwa Mo felt deep regret for having lost such a good opportunity, especially since he was now penniless. His attention went back to the formations. The first step he needed to do was understand these 4 formations. If he didn't understand the formations, how could he carve the formations on the small sword billets? If this was before the sword test conference, he would have definitely patted his ass and left. 4 kinds of completely different 4th grade formations was definitely outside of his abilities. Zwa Mo had just upgraded his fire seed and bathed in the introductory formations of the Jade Scroll from Kunlun, leaving his confidence at its peak. He decided to challenge this difficult task. According to the description on the Jade Scroll, he started to study the 4 types of formations. From this, it was possible to see how much help the Kunlun Jade Scroll was to him. Having studied the Kunlun Jade Scroll, Zwa Mo's vision and understanding had gone up several levels. 4th grade formations. Naturally, they had places that were profound and cryptic, especially when it was 4 completely different 4th grade formations. But Zwa Mo, in the span of 5 days, slowly managed to grasp the 4 kinds of formations bit by bit. When the 4 kinds of formations appeared in front of him, his heart was filled with an indescribable feeling of accomplishment. All of his exhaustion washed away. His heart was so free he wanted to howl. Zwa Mo did not use the double 4-turn fire formation that Lin Qian suggested. He planned to use this chance to try out his new fire seed. In any case, it wasn't his stuff, he thought heartlessly. Zwa Mo put the 4 pieces of cold magnet in front of him. When he had cut the cold magnet last time, they were not of the same size. However, this was not a big problem for him. Putting up a ling-gathering formation, he sat within the formation, the 5-colored pagoda floating in front of him. The 5-colored pagoda could greatly increase his abilities to control the 5 elements. Control of fire was naturally included. He flipped his palm and the new fire seed appeared above the tip of the 5-colored pagoda. Zhuemo decided to name this new fire seed Inky Lava White Fire. Since no one had named it before, it was up to him. A black center, deep red in the middle flame, and milky white on the outside. The inky lava white fire silently burned tamely without any of the explosiveness previous. Zhuemo's eyes became serious. He threw the smallest piece of cold magnet into the inky lava white fire. His ling power started to flow towards the inky lava white fire. The flame grew and wrapped around the cold magnet. The first step he needed to do was to use the flame to rid the cold magnet of any impurities it had. This was just a matter of large amounts of time. However, that did not include Zhuemo. His consciousness was strong. He could easily detect where the impurities were in the cold magnet. This way, his efficiency was much higher. He only spent 1 day to purify the piece of cold magnet. In this time, what he needed to do was maintain a steady output of ling power. With the aid of the MO matrix and the 5-colored pagoda, this laborious process was extremely easy. Next was forging the cold magnet into the shape of a sword. Zhuemo took a deep breath and increased the amount of ling power he was channeling. The inky lava white fire jumped up. In the seclusion room, cold and hot, 2 different presences crashed together and created explosions. Inside the flame, the cold magnet slowly melted until it became a puddle of metal liquid. What was strange was the metal liquid was not red but a strange black blue that released a strong chilling presence. Under the inky lava white fire, the 5-colored pagoda suddenly spun faster and faster until it became a 5-colored shadow. The metal liquid inside the fire seemed to be pulled by an invisible force and slowly changed shape. Time passed and sweat appeared on Zhuemo's forehead. His breathing became panting, and he seemed to be under a great burden. However, under his control, the spinning of the 5-colored pagoda did not slow, and still kept on increasing speed. Inside the flame, the metal liquid slowly flowed until it was almost in the shape of a sword. At this time, Zhuemo finally had a chance to take a breather and rest. The ling-gathering formation around him had already been expended and turned to dust. He used the change to make another ling-gathering formation. The most important step was coming. Zhuemo widened his eyes, not daring to relax. The metal liquid slowly solidified. Suddenly, a bright blue appeared on the black-blue metal liquid. Zhuemo's mind jumped. His hands bloomed like flowers. Spell after spell were cast from his hands into the sword billet within the flames. The sword billet still did not change. Not good, the flame was not strong enough. Zhuemo gritted his teeth, channeling ling power again. The black flame at the very center of the inky lava white flame was like a slender black tongue that licked the sword billet. At the same time, his hands moved again. Light after light was cast into the flame. The bright blue sword billet suddenly lit up. As the light of the spells landed on the sword billet, it was as though the light was clearly carved onto the surface of the sword billet. Zhuemo didn't dare to pause. His eyes wide, all the ling power in his body moving, his hair standing on end. He was like a strong whirlpool. The ling power from the ling-gathering formation was pulled by an invisible force to flood towards him. Large amounts of ling power flooded into his body. Even though there was the MO matrix, but Zhuemo still felt pain. At this time, he didn't have the effort to call out in pain. The finger motions of his hands sped up again, the light of the spells continuously feeding into the sword billet. Such fierce and extreme forging continued for 6 whole hours. A stream of fresh blood silently streamed out of the corner of his mouth, snaking down. The blurring fingers suddenly stopped in front of his body, the last spell accurately hitting the sword billet inside the flames. Diving. The sword billet gently hummed. The light of the sword billet suddenly brightened and then dimmed until it disappeared. A small black-blue sword billet silently floated in the air. 10 days later, guarding outside the door, Sue suddenly raised her head, joyous surprise on her face. Chapter 162 Reselling 4 blue-black sword billets floated vertically in front of Sue. There seemed to be an invisible magnetism between the sword billets. She reached out to touch one of them. The other 3 also moved along with it. The 4 sword billets maintained their distance from each other, all of them pointing away from each other in a compass arrangement. The joy in Sue's eyes became even heavier. The 4 sword billets marched around her. The storekeeper found it wondrous. Amazing craftsmanship. The 4 swords are as one, able to attack and defend, truly the finest. If it can be tempered over time, this sword would be hard to trace. Zuaremo was tired, but he was still quite alert. Finishing the sword billets, he found himself extremely relaxed. Having finished this, I need to leave. Zuaremo prepared to leave. Sue suddenly called Zwam, Mr. Zwa, please wait. This one had not helped during the sword test conference, yet Mr. Zwa still kept to your promise and helped me forge the sword billets. This little girl is extremely grateful. Mr. Zwa, please take this bottle of dying flowing moon. Sue's gaze was sincere, unable to let go of the 4 sword billets. Zuaremo naturally wouldn't be polite. Dying flowing moon was very good. Quickly taking the dying flowing moon, he said piously, then this one will accept. He thought of something and turned to say to the storekeeper, I have something here I want to ask storekeeper to take a look. The storekeeper hurriedly said, it would be my honor. If the reputation of Zuamo's strength was why they did not dare to slight him, now, after successfully forging the 4 sword billets, Zuamo's skill in forging received more respect from the storekeeper. The storekeeper and the others were business people. Their business was also in talismans. Why would they ever offend a cultivator who had limitless potential and was skilled in forging? Zuaremo took out a wooden box from the ring. Opening the box, he took out a jade bottle. The 2 saw Zuaremo was so serious, and became more curious to what treasure he was taking out. Zuaremo handed the jade bottle to the storekeeper, saying, this item is not inside the 5 elements, but this one does not know what it is. Please, storekeeper, take a look. Not inside the 5 elements. Sue's expression changed. The storekeeper also slightly changed expression but maintained the sternness in his expression. How good a storekeeper's eyes were was the most important measure of a storekeeper's skill. He didn't want to ruin his own reputation. Carefully taking out the cork, he poured out the gray mud inside the bottle onto a snowy white jade plate. After studying for a few moments, he solemnly announced, this one cannot distinguish what this substance is, but it truly is not inside the 5 elements. It doesn't seem like just one substance, but is a mixture of a variety of different substances not inside the 5 elements. It really is curious. What he found it strange was that materials not inside the 5 elements were rare, and it was hard to even find 1 or 2, so he did not know how such a complex mixture was produced. Zuaremo stilled. He suddenly remembered the large variety of materials he had thrown into the 5-colored pagoda. The composition of this gray mud must be very complex. He couldn't help but admire the skill of the storekeeper. What is the value of this substance? Zuaremo asked. The storekeeper shook his head. Hard to say. He then explained, if it was one substance, this one can easily set a price. The composition of this substance is extremely complex, and probably has a special use. Maybe it could be used in a flying sword. Materials not inside the 5 elements, if added into flying swords, can increase the grade of flying swords. He glanced at the 4 flying swords floating in front of Sue and said, if Miss Sue could add this substance into the 4 sword billets before they were forged, the grade would have increased greatly. Vexation came into Sue's eyes. But since the formations on the sword billet had taken form, there was nothing to do, so she did not say anything. Zuaremo was very curious. Substances not of the 5 elements can increase the grade of flying swords? I've never heard of this. The storekeeper saw Zuaremo was interested and said, it is hard to find substances not of the 5 elements. The price has never dropped, and dependent on the attributes of the material, the effect is different. However, one quality is common to all. They are extremely attractive to Ling power, especially Ling power that is not strongly oriented to the 5 elements. For roaming Xiu that cultivate the 5 elements, this is not a good thing, but to us sword Xiu, it is the best. Most of the sword sect in our Jie do not have Ling power oriented to the 5 elements. He had originally wanted to say that 5-element sword scriptures didn't have much of a future, when he suddenly remembered the sword scripture that Zhuo Mo practiced was a 5-element sword scripture, so he quickly changed his wording. Hearing this, Zhuo Mo instantly became excited. Coming from a sword sect, he instantly realized the value of the gray mud on his hands. If it is only used as material for flying swords, storekeeper, give a price. Zhuo Mo said. The storekeeper hesitated and reported a price, 200 pieces of 3rd-grade jingsher. As he finished, Su suddenly opened, 300 pieces of 3rd-grade jingsher. Can Mr. Zhuo part with this? After several interactions with Zhuo Mo, she had figured out his general personality. This guy was clear and hard to trick, but as long as there was enough money, he could be tempted. Okay. Without another word, Zhuo Mo agreed. 300 pieces of 3rd-grade jingsher was far beyond the price in his heart. The gray mud was just the waste from the 5-colored pagoda, and easy to get. Su was also crisp in handing over the jingsher to give to Zhuo Mo. Having jingsher, Zhuo Mo felt his heart rest. He sighed inside. As expected, with food in his hand, his heart wouldn't panic. 300 pieces of 3rd-grade jingsher. It wasn't much, but it wasn't a small amount. However, in the 100 Treasures Flying Pavilion, it was only enough to buy 1 talisman. Zhuo Mo could only reluctantly leave. The stuff of the 100 Treasure Flying Pavilion was good, but the price wasn't something normal people could pay. His goal was businesses with lower prices, for example, He Rong. Among the people that Zhuo Mo knew, Fu Jin was a snakehead. His connections were complex and could always obtain things difficult to find. However, if it was mainstream materials, he didn't have any advantages. He Rong and Zhuo Mo had worked together before. Their working relationship was well established. When He Rong saw Zhuo Mo, he was extremely surprised. He quickly gave a smile. Zhuyi coming to this little shop, it is our honor. Zhuo Mo's name was like the sun right now, a hot commodity in the entire Sky Moonjia. He Rong put himself extremely low. Does boss he find me too old? The first words that Zhuo Mo said made He Rong's expression change, but his next words made him release a breath. Treating an old friend like this, it really is too courteous. Just call me Xiao Zhuo. He Rong could not be blamed for being so nervous. Compared to before, Zhuo Mo was someone that was famous in Dongfu. Business people like He Rong saw even farther into the future. Wu Kong Sword Sect, who had 3 disciples of limitless potential and 4 Jindan experts, would definitely rise. Wu Kong Sword Sect was abnormally mysterious. No one knew what their conduct was like, so when outsiders faced them, they naturally were careful. He Rong was very experienced and naturally went along with the flow, pretending to be familiar. Look, you call me He boss, but wanting me to call you Xiao Zhuo, this is not right. If we are brothers, just call me old He. Having received such fame, Zhuo Mo's conduct did not seem different than before, without any pride. Thinking out the core disciples of those sects that he usually had relations with, He Rong couldn't help but sigh. If Wu Kong Sword Sect did not rise, then there was no justice in the world. Right? We have history. Zhuo Mo said. He had interacted countless times before with Fu Jin and the others. He was very familiar with all this. He Rong pointed at Zhuo Mo, smiling as he said, I know you won't just come for nothing. Say it, selling or buying? Zhuo Mo snicked. Old He knows me so well. I'm planning on buying some 5-element materials. 5-element materials? He Rong had a puzzled expression. What do you want that for? He suddenly realized, right, my memory, you are also skilled in forging and dan making. Zhuo Mo didn't explain, only smiling and saying, I want to pick some materials strong in 5-element power. Do you have any? Good kinds or normal? Normal. Come with me. He Rong nodded and said to Zhuo Mo, walking at the front. Hirong's store was composed of the front shop and the backyard. Zhuemo followed him through the store into the backyard. Passing through the yard and into the inner compound, Zhuemo finally noticed that the doorway to the compound was full of jinji. Even with Zhuemo's eyes, he couldn't help but be shocked. Some of these jinji were extremely powerful, and confusion and illusory jinji were countless. Just as he was puzzled, Hirong suddenly stopped. His hands cast multiple spells. A door of light appeared in front of them. "Come in." Hirong stepped inside the door first. Zhuemo was curious and hurried to follow. Stepping inside the door of light, the space in front of him suddenly became vast. There were hundreds of 10 Shanghai shelves made from pine wood arranged into lines. The shelves were filled with all kinds of materials, and a strange odor wafting in the air. It was the first time Zhuemo had seen something this spectacular. He thought inside that Hirong's business was much larger than he had imagined. Hirong did not show it, but he was not a simple character. Zhuemo felt his steps were much lighter than usual. He made a sound and looked down at the ground. Hirong noticed Zhuemo's shock. He smiled and said, "Brothers must rarely come to the stores." He then explained, storage areas would usually have a light feather formation on the ground. The workers can float in the air, and it is convenient to fetch items. If they accidentally drop something, the item would not be damaged. Zhuemo instantly understood, so that's why. His feet slightly used force, and he was like a feather that floated into the air. What was even more particular was that he could freely adjust his direction in the air. The design was amazing. Hirong had a smile. He had the desire to show his strength when he decided to take Zhuemo into the stores. Wukong Sword Sect would definitely rise in the future. In order to create a cooperative relationship with this kind of sect, strength was the base of cooperation. Here, all the 5 element materials are here. Pick whichever items you want. Oh, I'll give you the best price. Hirong smiled. Giving a good price, but not free. Zhuemo felt that was even more comfortable. Then many thanks, old brother he. Zhuemo's words were really from his heart. People who had strength could always more easily receive respect from others. Zhuemo went into the materials and started to pick. His measure was very special. He didn't care about the grade of the material, what he needed was 5 elemental power. The 5-colored pagoda was not a picky eater. Right now, the 5-colored pagoda's primary goal was to recover its power, not to increase its level. He did not need to consider high-level materials. Also, in compliance with Zhuemo's usual conduct, he decided to take the price to the extreme. Materials that were the cheapest and had the most 5-element power. Chapter 163 People don't do this. Returning to the sect, Zhuemo was very satisfied. He had come back with a huge pile of materials. When he thought of Hirong's dumbstruck expression, he felt great. Almost as though he was robbing Hirong, he had bought out many of the rarely used materials. 300 pieces of jingsher was not a large sum, but to buy low-grade materials? It had great buying power. 5-colored berry leaf, first-grade material, containing rich 5-elemental power, but due to the mixture of 5-elemental power, it was only used at Dan formation for only a few kinds of lingdan. 20 sprigs to a bundle. Each bundle sold for 10 pieces of 2nd-grade jingsher. Gold-patterned snake fragrant grass, rich in gold element power, often used as an auxiliary material in tempering flying swords. It was considered a low-end material due to the fact there were many substitutes for it. After the gold-patterned snake fragrant grass was dried, it was pressed into bricks. 1 brick weighed 2 taels. The price was 5 pieces of 2nd-grade jingsher. Rainbow vine held a mixture of the 5 elements. The body of the vine was multicolored and was named for rainbow-like appearance. When added to a fire, it could increase the power of the fire. 10 caddies in a bundle. The price was 15 pieces of 2nd-grade jingsher. Piling all these materials he had brought into the yard, Silly Bird flew down from the roof and rooted around before flying back to the roof in disappointment. There clearly was no snack that she liked here. Zhuemo was too lazy to pay attention to this wastrel that only knew how to eat and laze around. He summoned the 5-colored pagoda. It was lucky that Ji had practiced Vajra Profound Sutra. Looking at the mountain of material, Zwa-Emo took a breath and started Vajra Profound Sutra. As he started to work, he took of his top, revealing his golden ribs. The bundles of 5-colored berry grass was moved in groups of 10. The bricks of dried gold-patterned snake fragrant grass went flying like rain. Moving the 10 catty bundles of rainbow vine was the most exhausting. Zwa-Emo had turned into a manual laborer. In the yard, Zwa-Emo sweated like rain, singing loudly, "Pagoda, you are a cow, what you eat is grass, what is squeezed from you is milk, ah-ah-en." The 5-colored pagoda appeared to be drunk as it swayed as it ate the materials. When the last piece of material was sucked into the pagoda, the 5-colored pagoda finally laid down with a thud. Zwa-Emo froze. Not caring that he was half-naked, he bent down and prodded the 5-colored pagoda which was on the ground. No response. It shouldn't have a problem from eating too much, right? He thought hesitantly. After a while, the 5-colored pagoda rolled around on the ground twice before swaying as it stood up. The stone in Zwa-Emo's heart landed. He laughed heartlessly. "Ha, I had thought you were too full. So you still hadn't had enough." Maybe it was that it heard the words. The 5-colored pagoda suddenly shook. Splat, it spat out something and then dropped to the ground, rolling a few circles before becoming motionless. Zwa-Emo was gleeful. Did it poop out the remnants again? What the little pagoda pooped out was Jingshur. But when he looked, he was greatly disappointed. This wasn't any remnant. It clearly was half a bundle of 5-colored berry leaf. He couldn't help but look in puzzlement and ask, "The pagoda, is this not tasty?" The 5-colored pagoda shook, rolling away from Zwa-Emo. On the rooftop, Silly Bird looked in sympathy at the 5-colored pagoda that was rolling around. Then she lowered her head to go back to preening her feathers. What Zwa-Emo felt disappointed about was that Lil Pagoda didn't spit out any remnants this time. His plan of buying low and selling high failed. However, with large amounts of 5-element power, the 5-colored pagoda seemed to have recovered to a large extent, even though the sheen was not as bright as before. These materials were just low-grade materials. They were enough in terms of quantity, but in quality, it was still not enough. Zwa-Emo was helpless. From the results of these two experiences, he concluded only high-level materials would yield remnants. Now, whenever Zwa-Emo looked at the 5-colored pagoda, the 5-colored pagoda would timidly shrink back. Zwa-Emo said in a regretful tone, "Pagoda, if you could poop after eating all this, how great would it be?" The 5-colored pagoda shook, continuously making sounds of throwing up. Back of Wukong Mountain, 5 people floated in midair. Under their feet, the valley was completely transformed. Finally done. Yenle couldn't help but sigh. The other people were also tired. Wu Ling Sanren couldn't help but say, "Your sect has really spared no expense." Such an expanse, it is rare to see even in the restricted grounds of those large sections. His expression was extremely exhausted, but different from the others was that the exhaustion could barely disguise his excitement. The Jinji in front of him was created by 5 Jindan experts working together to destroy 5 mountain peaks, clearing out 5 mountain valleys, and chiseling out 9 deep springs. They had covered more than half of Wukong Mountains. If this wasn't considered a great work, then Sky Moon Jie had no great works. We've really bled blood for this boy. Even a person as composed as Pei Yuan Ran felt his heart was bleeding. Wu Ling Sanren's payment, countless materials. Almost half of Wukong Sword Sect's assets had been used up. Yen Lu, who was in charge of the monies, had a terrible expression, gritting his teeth as he said, "The boy can slowly enjoy this." He turned and then said to Wu Ling Sanren with a slightly suspicious tone, "Are you sure he cannot solve it?" "The boy is very talented in formations." Wu Ling Sanren was so furious he almost left. Pei Yuan Ran hurriedly lectured Yenle. "Do not be so impolite to Sanren." Yenle twisted his mouth. Everyone was in Jindan, he wasn't afraid of Wu Ling Sanren. However, lectured by Shixiang, he didn't dare to speak again. Wu Ling Sanren's anger slightly calmed, a flush crossing his old face as he snorted. "It's not this one praising myself, This great formation was formed with the aid of you four. This one had also applied all of the knowledge this one ever learned. The future is uncertain, but up until today, it is truly the greatest masterpiece this one has created. If us 5 Jindan cannot imprison a Zhuji, then we should just kill ourselves. Yen Lu blushed as the other talked. He defended himself. We don't want to imprison him inside, we just want him to practice the sword. Don't worry. Wu Ling Sanren's eyes rolled. He snorted coldly. This formation has layers of Jinji. To break though, there is only one way. That is, to practice the sword essence to the level of heart-turn sword essence. That is the only way to comprehend the intricacies involved and find the way out of the formation. That's good, that's good. Seeing the two descend into fighting, Pei Yuan ran hurriedly smoothed over. Xen Yen and Shi Feng Rong looked on coldly from the side. Wu Ling Sanren had not finished. Friend Xian's sword essence is pure and sharp. This one has not seen one like it before. However, everyone has to be careful. If one enters the formation and has not comprehended to heart-turn sword essence, they cannot come out. To stop the boy from using his knowledge of formations to escape, this one has set up 18 levels of Jinji surrounding the formation. It is as solid as gold. If the 4 of you try to break the formation together, the formation would not stop you, but the person inside the formation would not escape death. The 4 of them started to hesitate. If the boy really could not solve the formation, if he encountered some danger inside, then they could do nothing about it. Friends, do not worry too much. Inside the formation, this one had especially emptied out some life areas to allow him to rest. With his knowledge of formations, it should not be difficult to find these life areas. Even though you cannot enter the formation, but you can observe the inside the formation. This one has also left behind some small transportation doors so you can transfer in supplies. Xen Yen suddenly opened. I'll find him. Finishing, he disappeared. Zhou Mo rested lazily on the swing chair, idly soaking in the sun. The time to open the secret realm had been pushed back again and again. He didn't have much to do. The change in opening the secret realm had supposedly been at the request of many sect leaders. The help that the sword test conference had given the young Xiuzhe was very large. The first thing many people had done when they had gone back to their sect was go into seclusion. Right now, many people still had not come out of seclusion. Asking for the secret realm opening time to be delayed was natural. Eldest Shixiang was still in seclusion. Luo Li Shixiang had been hurried into the sword cave. Thinking about this, Zhou Mo found it quite strange. Luo Li Shixiang was allowed to go to the sword cave, but why didn't the sect leaders and the others allow him to enter the sword cave? He didn't really care if he could go. What he cared about was that these recent days had been very peaceful. Xen Yen Shibua and the others hadn't bothered him. Thinking about the good that Xen Yen Shibua had said when he was recovering, Zhou Mo felt coldness come into his heart. Even if he was under the sun, he could not get rid of the cold. He had a strong feeling that this matter wouldn't easily conclude. There definitely was something waiting for him. Just at this time, he saw Xen Yen descending from the skies. In an instant, Zhou Mo felt like he dropped into ice, his limbs went cold. Xen Yen coldly snorted, his hand holding Zhou Mo up. Without another word, he flew into the sky. Second Shibua flew extremely quickly, the harsh wind making Zhou Mo unable to open his eyes. Shibua, where are we going? Zhou Mo tried to bear the strong wind and carefully asked. Cultivate the sword. Xen Yen was expressionless. Cultivate the sword? Zhou Mo's heart rested slightly. Good, it wasn't anything strange. Wasn't this going to the back of the mountain? Was Shibua going to teach him about the sword in the back regions? Suddenly, Zhou Mo's body froze. Below him, a gigantic formation appeared in his vision. The formation that he had made in the sword test conference could only be called a small formation when compared to the formation in front of him. Did the sect have such a large formation? They didn't. He had come to this area many times before. Zhou Mo saw the sect leader, Yen Le Shibua, master, and an old Taoist that he did not know. But why did their eyes seem slightly strange as they looked at him? Just as Zhou Mo was puzzled, Xen Yen Shibua's hands suddenly relaxed. Ah! Zhou Mo shrieked. The wind howling in his ears, he was unable to control his body. Panicked, he hurriedly started the Vajra Profound Sutra. A golden figure fell from the sky and slammed into the ground. Boom! The earth shook as dirt was sent flying everywhere. A golden figure hit the dirt directly, leaving an indent in the shape of a person. Zwa-mo felt his organs had shifted from the impact. He dazedly opened his eyes and struggled to get up as he spit up mud. Lucky that Ji had practiced? He hissed in pain. His body felt like it was going to break. Even though his Vajra Profound Sutra had reached the level of red lotus flowing gold, it still hurt when he dropped from such a height. But he was slightly reassured. Since he had eaten dirt, then this matter should pretty much be concluded, he thought inside. Where was this? This wasn't right. In front of him, sword essences roiled about, flowing in layers as dense as a forest, unable to be avoided. Zwa-mo wanted to cry. People don't do this. Chapter 164 Sword Essence Formation. Just as Zwa-mo was gaping in befuddlement, outside of the formation Wu Ling Sanren was amazingly smug. This formation is composed with our 4 sword essences positioned at the cardinal points. Friend Xen Yan's sword essence is the strongest and guards the center. The 9 Ling springs are the passages through the entire formation, allowing the sword essence to regenerate itself. The 5 sword essences create destruction between themselves. It is impossible to find the one living change when you have not reached the level of heart-turn sword essence. Even if one is in Jin Dan, if their sword essence is not high enough, it is impossible. Trying to break through the formation with brute force is seeking death. Pei Yuan Ran praised, "The formation that Sanren has set up is amazing. To use sword essences in a formation, this one has never heard of it." Wu Ling Sanren was very proud inside, but he did not lose his calm, modestly saying, "If it wasn't for the requirements of your sect, this one wouldn't have thought of such a method." He then sighed. "That day when I was a judge, I saw Zwa-mo's battle. Truthfully, this one was very shocked, but friend Xen Yan is right, we sword Shio must practice the sword. But I haven't thought that your sect would spend so much for one disciple. To be from such a sect, Zwa-mo is very fortunate." Pei Yuan Ran shook his head. Money and talismans are important, but what is most important are people. The people are present, so the sect is present. The people are strong, then the sect is strong. Since he is a disciple of our sect, then this matter is our duty. We only hope that he would wake and return to the right path as early as possible, as to not waste our efforts. The other 3 had stern expressions. Wu Ling Sanren felt a deep sense of respect for these elders. Sect leader Pei, do not worry. This boy is intelligent and certainly will understand your efforts. Pei Yuan Ran laughed. If Sanren did not help this time, we wouldn't know what to do. This guy really is a headache. No matter. After being tempered, he would understand. There are 10,000 paths in the work, but only cultivating the sword is the true path. One sword breaks all moves. All his tricks are just like paper in front of sword essences. Wu Ling Sanren said proudly. He dared to say something like this, not because he had such confidence in his formation, but strong confidence in these 4 people's sword essences. He had heard rumors about the 4 elders of Wukong sword sect. Yenlu was skilled in management, Shifeng Rong specialized in dan-making, and sect leader Pei Yuan Ran did not involve himself in worldly affairs. He had heard the reputation of the Ice Dragon sword, but never had personally seen it, so he hadn't felt anything. Only during the construction of this formation did he experience how deep the roots of Wukong sword sect were. They far surpassed anyone's imagination. Of the 5 Shio present, his sword essence was the weakest. This made him feel a sense of embarrassment. He had rarely seen a sword essence as strong and terrifying as Xen Yan's, which surpassed many of those so-called experts. Originally, he had been worried the 4 sword essences would not be pure enough and would destabilize the formation. Now, he understood he had underestimated them. With Xen Yan's sword essence, which guarded the center, this big formation was as solid as rock and was unable to be destroyed. This formation was stronger than any other formation he had ever made. Even Jindan experts would be unable to escape unscathed if they attacked this formation and were attacked in return by the pure sword essences left by these 5 shio. His only regret was that such a strong formation was to imprison a disciple in just Zhuji. This did not allow him to feel a sense of accomplishment. However, to be able to use this chance to form a relationship with Wukong Sword Sect, he was naturally very willing. He was full of confidence about Wukong Sword Sect's future after seeing these 4 people's terrifying power. The elders were strong and cared about nurturing their disciples. These disciples were also geniuses. Such a sect, he really couldn't think of a reason it would not prosper. Pei Yuan Ran saw that everyone's faces were extremely tired and smiled. This boy really has caused great trouble for us usually. Now, let him go enjoy it himself. Let's go, we can rest. Sanren can get a taste of my Ling tea. Wu Ling Sanren hurriedly agreed. Zuaremo was completely ignorant that the elders had left. He didn't dare to move. He was too familiar with the enormous dragon moving in front of him. He had been sliced by this thing countless times. Second Sherba's sword essence. Gritting his teeth, Zuaremo suddenly raised his voice to wail, "Master! Disciple was wrong. This disciple will definitely change, let this disciple out." Master might look cold, but she was very concerned about him. If he begged, maybe Master's heart would soften and let him out. After shouting until his throat had gone raw, there was no movement from outside the formation. Bitter water rose in Zuamo's heart like a flood. His little heart floated in bitterness. Up until now, he still did not understand what he had done wrong to make the sect leader and the others so furious. As he shouted, his feet didn't dare to move. The dragon in front of him freely moved around, never too far from him. The cold and indifferent eyes would occasionally sweep across his body. He felt that he was cold from head to toe. He did not doubt that if he moved the slightest, the dragon claw of this dragon would gently swipe and he would be torn to pieces, flesh flying and lose his life. This thing was the true essence. He wanted to cry as he shuddered. Only when he truly faced Second Sherba's ice dragon did he experience how great the difference was between Pu Yao's fake sword essence and the real one. Terror, instinctive terror rose from his heart. No matter how he suppressed it, terror was like a yao weed grass that could not be stopped, furiously growing through his heart. After warily standing for an hour, the dragon moved away. But Zuaemo instantly understood the look that it gave right before leaving. "I'll come back." When the dragon disappeared completely, the terrifying pressure also disappeared. The land was empty as though nothing had happened. At this time, Zuaemo lost his nervousness and started to scan the surroundings. He quickly understood he was in the middle of a formation. Thinking about the astoundingly large formation he had seen from the air, he shuddered. Fuck, did the sect leader and the others want to kill him? He had just been sighing in amazement at how big the formation was. He hadn't thought that he would be thrown into the formation by Second Sherba. He had to admit he underestimated the rage Second Sherba had towards him. His mind recovering, Zuaemo thought about how his wailing had not received a response and instantly understood that the sect leaders and the others truly wanted him to suffer. It wasn't that he hadn't thought before what punishment Second Sherba and the others would give him. Getting beaten, house arrest, or special training, he had prepared himself mentally. But after all those calculations, who would have thought that Second Sherba did something even more severe? Even if Zuaemo didn't understand formations, he would be able to see the extraordinary nature of the formation, and he did have some knowledge of formations. Just one look and he could detect the strength of the person who set up the formation was much higher than his. This kind of difference was not just in one area, but in all areas, including cultivation, understanding of formations, sword essences, etc., etc. Zuaemo looked into the surroundings. He was clear that the sect leader and the others definitely wouldn't take his life, they just wanted him to suffer a bit. But this formation? Very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. Zuaemo swallowed. In a few short steps, the shock in his heart increased. Each step was full of killing intent. Damn it. Zuaemo wanted to swear. Even the ground was permeated with fine and dense sword essences that disregarded the shoes on his feet and needled into the soles. It was like he was walking on a board covered with needles. Each step left his feet full of pain. It was not just that. The air in front of him looked harmless, but if he moved, the disturbance of the air would naturally form layers of sword essence around him. These sword essences were like fine icicles, slicing Zhuemo, who was in the middle. They couldn't do this. Zhuemo wailed inside. Just how big of an offense had he made to make Master and the others so furious? Staying in his original spot, he could only wait for the dragon to come back. That was too dangerous. He gritted his teeth and started Vajra Profound Sutra. Right now, his Vajra Profound Sutra was at Red Lotus Flowing Gold, hard to wound by normal flying swords. Lucky that Ji had practiced it. Zhuemo rejoiced inside. Wukong Hall, Pei Yuan ran and the other four idly drank Ling tea. Haha, that boy definitely would use Vajra Profound Sutra. Yen Lu snickered and glanced at Xen Yen, who was drinking without speaking a word. Second, Shixiang really thought of everything, even planning for Vajra Profound Sutra. Sword Xiu only cultivate the sword. Xen Yen said frigidly. He sipped and then added, not the body. This boy really is terrible, he only just walks the wrong paths. Shifeng Rong's face was angry. Her disciple had made everyone feel a headache and used up so much wealth, she kept on feeling angry. Making him cultivate the body was so he could have something to save his life. He's great. He just silently practices it to the 4th level. Getting him to learn formations, it's so he can learn more about dan making, so he has a secondary profession and wouldn't have trouble making his living. This little brat just sinks into formations and doesn't know to progress, his side job becoming his main profession. His main profession actually went backwards. Vent up to this point, she felt very uncomfortable. It's all my fault. I've been remiss in teaching him. That's why he walked onto the wrong path. Wu Ling Sanren hurriedly comforted. Sure, Xianzi is overly blaming yourself. Young people always are tempted by new things. That's normal. Which sect doesn't have 1 or 2 disciples like this? As the elders, we can only slowly guide them. Sanren is right. Shimmy, don't be sad. Pei Yuan ran also comforted. Yen Lu snickered. That boy can just keep suffering. I've been finding his Vajra Profound Sutra an eyesore for a long time. Red Lotus Flowing Gold, he thinks he's a Diana? Even Diana lose when they face us. He needs to understand all his tricks are just garbage. None of the other 4 objected to Yen Li's words. They all had a matter-of-face expression. The pride of Sword Xiu came from thousands of years of holding a ruling position. They were unshakable. Zhuemo didn't think that his actions would have been completely planned for by the elders. Just as he activated the Vajra Profound Sutra, the sword essences which had been like icicles suddenly became sharks that tasted blood and flooded towards him from all the surrounding areas. Bring, bring, bring. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Different howls of sword essences filled Zhuemo's ears like the earth was breaking. The sky was changing color. The sudden change made Zhuemo freeze. He dazedly looked at the air that had turned turbulent, looked at the howls created by the sky full of sword essences, at the sword essences that flooded at him from all around. What was this? Chapter 165 Wukong Expansion. After drinking tea, and having the dense Ling energy fill them, everyone felt their body become relaxed and their exhaustion began to disappear. Pei Yuan Ran said, it's probably time. Let's go and see how the boy is. Everyone loudly agreed to this suggestion. The 5 of them traveled together to the back of Wukong Mountain. In front of the formation, the 5 took a look and laughed. That boy is really slippery. How could he not have found the life area? Yen Lu pointed at the formation, roaring with laughter. Inside the formation, Zhuemo was in a sorry state. His clothing was ripped. He had clearly suffered. Having bled for this, Yen Lu felt extremely good. Not just him, even Pei Yuan Ran and the others felt very good. The 4 of them were all Jindan, yet they couldn't do anything against this Zhuji boy. They had accumulated a lot of anger. If they threatened, there was the probability that this boy would run and join another sect. Temptation? This brat was the wealthiest person in Wukong Mountain. Looking at this brat in such a sorry state, they felt they hadn't wasted their efforts. Wu Ling Sanren also laughed. Zhou Mo is very talented in formations. It is not hard for him to find the life area. He noted and then decided not to involve himself. It was better to leave early. This was a matter for their sect. He could see that Zhou Mo had limitless potential. If the other discovered who had created the formation, they might come and create trouble for him. He wouldn't be able to bear it. The more he thought, the more he found it likely. Zhou Mo didn't look like a generous person. He hurriedly said, "Since the matter is concluded, this one will bid you all farewell. There are still some affairs in the sect that this one has to take care of. If this one has free time in the future, this one will come again." Pei Yuan ran and the others naturally tried to keep him, but seeing that Wu Ling Sanren was being very determined, they did not stop him. As for the payment, they had paid it already. Wu Ling Sanren bowed with folded hands and quickly vanished into the horizon. Pei Yuan ran and the others did not care. The road of cultivation was very long. Coming and going was very normal. Shifeng Rong looked at Zhou Mo, who was in a terrible state, and suddenly said, "If Zhou Mo cannot get out, wouldn't he be unable to enter the secret realm?" Pei Yuan Ran did not find it important. The secret realm is a small matter. There are just a few good treasures. All that is received are material items. With Zhou Mo's talent, as long as he is willing to focus on practicing the sword, those material items aren't worth anything. If it comes down to it, we will compensate him. Pei Yuan Ran's answer made Shifeng Rong satisfied. At the side, Yen Le twisted his mouth, but did not speak. He didn't dare to offend Fourth Shimmy. Xen Yen was like a statue, coldly staring at Zhou Mo inside the formation. Zhou Mo was very terrible at the moment. Not one part of his clothing was whole. He stared with trepidation at a place not far away. That dragon was coldly and proudly moving by, its gaze occasionally sweeping across his body. He hadn't thought the sect leader and the others had even planned for the use of the Oivajra Profound Sutra. Even now, when he thought about the terrifying experience he just had, he felt his head prickle, his body cold. Countless sword essences had charged at him like a crowd of hungry sharks, each one wanting to rip off a piece of flesh. His pitiful Vajra Profound Sutra, even if it had already reached Red Lotus flowing gold, it was destroyed in an instant. If it wasn't that his consciousness was outstanding, if he hadn't studied the Kuan Lu Introductory Formations Jade Scroll, and that he had deepened his understanding of formations, then he would have drowned in the countless sword essences. He had stumbled and crawled to find this little area of safety. As long as he didn't step outside of this circle that was 3 zhang in diameter, nothing would happen to him. This little circle finally allowed Zhou Mo to believe that the sect leader and the others didn't want to kill him. However, this great formation was really terrifying. Zhou Mo looked warily at the dragon that was prancing outside, not daring to move at all. Outside the formation, Pei Yuan Ran looked and then said, "Let's go. The boy won't cry unless he has 1 foot in the grave. He can slowly be ground down." In their eyes, Zhou Mo was greedy and wretched, and his personality was extremely stubborn. He certainly wouldn't admit defeat so easily. They knew this all too well, which was why they had spared no expense in creating such a big formation. This was their preparation for a long battle. The 4 left, without a worry, planning on coming back in a few days. The formation looked dangerous, but in reality, it was very safe. Inside the formation, was Zhou Mo someone who would let himself be wounded? Outside the formation, he didn't have to worry about enemies or wild beasts. A formation that even they could not break. In all of Sky Moonjia, there definitely would not be more than 3 people who might be able to break through. Pei Yuan Ran was even considering if they could change the formation after Zhou Mo came out. In the future, it could work as the restricted grounds for the sect. With the protection of the sect, there was no question of safety. Zhou Mo used his consciousness to sweep through the surrounding space. He had already decided, if the sect leader came to ask him if he knew he was wrong and if he would change, he wouldn't hesitate in surrendering. He had to bow to the circumstances. "Sect leader, if you say kill, we definitely won't set a fire. If you said east, we definitely wouldn't walk west. Heroes were people that recognized the circumstances. Zhuo comforted himself. Yet what he did not realize was the sect leader and the others overestimated his stubbornness. Zhuo, who had been waiting to surrender for several days, didn't even see the shadow of the sect leader and the others. He had to face a problem. There was no water and food. How could he have predicted that a calamity such as this would occur? His ring was almost empty. Under the effect of the Jinji inside the formation, he was not able to even use little art of cloud and rain. Naturally, he didn't have any water. It was fine if he didn't have food. But without water, then it was bad. He licked his dry lips. He could smell the water power in the air. He was certain the big formation definitely had water sources like springs. However, the outside was empty, the dragon was not present, but Zhuo was not happy. He knew when he walked out of the life area, he would be surrounded by sword essences. But he still decided to try. If he didn't act, he would never be able to walk outside of the formation. At this time, he finally understood the malicious intentions of the elders. They wanted him to charge into the formation. Wasn't it just charging through? Zhuo boldened his heart and left the life area. Outside the sect, Pei Yuan ran and the others released a breath. They had never thought that Zhuo would just stay inside the life area for the last few days and had never come out. They had originally planned on sending some water and food in. But seeing Zhuo retreating into the life area and not come out, looking as though he was waiting to stand off against them, they instantly let go of their intentions to send food and water in. The boy finally came out. Pei Yuan Ran said. Yen Lu nodded. He clearly was relieved. This guy is definitely one of the most wretched disciples in the sect. I guess that if we didn't cut off his food and water, he probably would just stay in the life area to wait it out. Humph. Wait until the formation collapses. Shifeng Rong was somewhat unhappy. Third Shixiang, weren't you the same when you were young? Yen Lu choked and instantly became silent. Xen Yen unblinkingly stared at Zhuo inside the formation. Inside, he also was relieved. He had been afraid as well that Zhuo would just sit in passive resistance. He believed that the guy could definitely do something like that. However, since Zhuo had walked out, they instantly paid attention. They were very curious how Zhuo would respond. This brat might not walk on the right path, but he had an endless bag of tricks that was always surprising. Walking out of the life grounds, Zhuo instantly felt the tearing from the sword essences in the air, the prickling from the ground. However, he didn't dare use Vajra Profound Sutra. This time, only gritted his teeth and bore the pain as he slowly moved in the direction of water. Outside the formation, Xen Yen suddenly opened. He's finding water. The other three understood, a smile coming onto their faces. When Wu Ling Sanren had been setting up the formation, he had already considered this point. It was not difficult to find a water source inside the formation, but it was not easy to resupply himself. Zhuo bore the pain, his consciousness sweeping around to search for a source of water. He found the slower he moved, the lower the threat the surrounding sword essences posed. So, with turtle speed, he slowly moved in the direction of water. A short journey he used up 4 whole hours. Outside the formation, the elders had long lost their patience and left. There were many things they had to take care of at the moment, and this period of time was extremely important for Wukong Sword Sect. Wukong Sword Sect had shown in the sword test conference, and naturally walked to the front of the stage. It was not appropriate to remain as low-key as they did before. They needed to adjust the plan for the entire sect. Countless eyes were focused on Wukong Sword Sect. This period would be the greatest transformation of Wukong Sword Sect in recent times. Reputation, status, they had that. What they needed to fight for was the benefits that came with it. Wukong Sword Sect's rise would certainly affect some sections. The fighting that would occur would be very harsh. Pei Yuan Ran and the others were not kind and generous people. Once they finalized their plan, they moved lightning fast and without any hesitation. In the time span of several nights, Wukong Sword Sect continuously defeated 3 sections. Even though it was 3 small sects, but people were still able to see a great beast slowly opening his jaws. As expected, Wukong Sword Sect did not stop their expansion. In the next 7 days, all the smaller sects surrounding Wukong Sword Sect were merged into Wukong Sword Sect. Pei Yuan Ran's conduct was just and authoritative. Xan Yen was invincible in battle. Yen Lu was clever and experienced. Shi Feng Rong's battle strength was not ordinary, and her skill in dan-making was unrivaled in Dong Fu. The four cooperated well, with great trust between them. Even though many small sects had been absorbed, but the inner management of Wukong Sword Sect did not become disordered. The sect was disciplined and efficient in its restructuring. This was a battle. There were negotiations behind the scenes, and naturally fighting in the open. In one night, Xan Yen defeated 7 experts, shaking Sky Moon Jia. It was that battle which completely established the fame of Ice Dragon Sword, and also greatly increased the rate the Wukong Sword Sect expanded. Under such a situation, Pei Yuan Ran and the others had no attention to spare for Zhou Mo trapped inside the formation. They only ordered Li Yingfeng to regularly send in water and food, as well as jade scrolls. Of course, it was only Ever-Sword Scripture jade scrolls. The pitiful Zhou Mo had encountered a big problem. Chapter 166 This land is great. Zhou Mo stared at the purple vine that was growing wildly. The purple vines were about the thickness of a finger, smooth and strong. There were strings of small blue flowers on the vine, giving the appearance of being both serene and elegant. The vine did not have any supports yet naturally grew in midair. Hiss, Zhou Mo sucked in a breath. His body was covered in small wounds. He was full of wariness as he stared at the purple vine. He could sense a familiar taste within the vine. Manifestation. The purple vine was Master's sword essence. Damn it. His gaze passed between the vines to look at the spring that was bubbling with water. He unconsciously licked his dry lips. Even though water and food would be sent into the formation at regular intervals, the amount was not enough to satisfy his needs. After wasting so many days, he had pretty much grasped this damned formation. His heart was very cold. He didn't know what master the sect leader had hired to set up this formation, but his skills were amazing. Zhou Mo had never thought about constructing a formation with sword essences. When he realized this, he didn't dare believe his own judgment. What made him feel even more hopeless was the 5 sword essences inside the formation were all sword essence manifestations. Damn it. A formation created by 5 Jindan experts for him to suffer through. Did the sect leader and the others have nothing else to do? Zhou Mo cursed again and again inside. He had suffered greatly in the formation ever since he entered. His body was covered in wounds. With the 5 sword essence manifestations guarding the formation, just the ripples that were released were enough to grind him into powder. If he even tried to use the Vajra Profound Sutra, the fine sword essences would flood towards him. Zhou Mo felt very depressed. In the beginning, who was it that wanted him to practice Vajra Profound Sutra? Each location that had water was guarded by a sword essence. Sect leader's sword essence was a mountain peak, high and solid. Zhou Mo felt his heart shudder after taking a look. The heavy presence made him unable to breathe. He had turned and ran away. He hadn't thought that the sect leader would also be so powerful. Yen Lesherba's sword essence was a wild snow fox. The slender figure was a great contrast to Sherba. If it wasn't for the slyness in its eyes, he would have doubted whose sword essence it was. Master's sword essence was a purple vine. Since he had never seen Master fight, he had been hoping to try his luck. The result, strings of blue flowers exploded simultaneously, each turning to a rain of flowers that surrounded Zhou Mo. He finally tasted what it was like to be cut by 1,000 knives. The last sword essence was very unfamiliar to him. It was like a bagua formation and revolved relentlessly. It was the first time Zhou Mo saw such a strange sword essence. However, after interacting with sword essences every day, he managed to grasp some insights. This bagua sword essence might look extraordinary, but it was the weakest of the 5 sword essences. Yet with Zhuemo's pitifully low cultivation, he couldn't handle it even though it was the weakest Bagua sword essence. The few life areas inside the formation were the only places he could rest. Zhuemo could only dejectedly retreat back to the life area. However, he hadn't suffered these days for nothing. Certain areas were not dangerous unless he entered. This sword essence formation seemed to emphasize imprisonment, not killing. Otherwise, the 5 sword essences only needed to move on their own and everything inside the formation would turn to dust. At regular intervals, items would be sent into the formation. Water, grains, jingshi, lingdan, sword scriptures, etc., etc. Especially sword scriptures. Did the elders want to move the entire records room into the formation? At this time, he finally understood that he wouldn't be getting out soon. Not being able to decipher why the elders were so angry, Zhuemo was too lazy to think. Since he was here, he would stay here. After slowly becoming accustomed to it, he was full of curiosity towards the big formation. He had never seen such a powerful formation before. To be able to experience it personally, wasn't it the best way to learn? Thinking like this, Zhuemo instantly found the days were not so hard. Other than the wondrous aspects of the formation itself, the 5 sword essence manifestations were also exposed to him without any disguise. There were many things he could study and copy. Zhuemo had comprehended sword essence a long time ago. It had stopped because he had not spent effort after that. Now that he had examples, if he didn't grasp the chance, he would be too dumb. This land was great. The formation and the sword essences couldn't directly teach him, but Zhuemo had his own methods. He retreated back into the life area. Not far away, the dragon slowly and idly moved its gigantic body. Zhuemo was even able to see the ice-like scales on its body. He snickered, raised his hand, and threw a rock at the ice dragon. Pew pew pew. The little rock was instantly ground to dust by the countless fine sword essences in the air. Even the dust was unable to reach the dragon. But the dragon clearly became provoked by Zhuemo's challenge. It roared and the entire formation shook. Zhuemo stared at the enraged dragon with terror and excitement. The strong presence made him tremble uncontrollably, but he stared with wide, unblinking eyes. The furious dragon started to rampage inside the formation. Dirt and stones flew into the air. The sword essences were like the pack of wolves that heard the call of its alpha and exploded forth. The dragon twisted its enormous body, all the scales on its body turning into countless sharp icy sword essences that shot into the surroundings. Too domineering. Zhuemo could feel the peerless power inside the formation, could feel each sword essence, no matter how small it was so whole and complete. There was an extremely complex relationship between each sword essence, so wondrous it was almost unimaginable. The tide. Zhuemo once again saw the tide. Every time the dragon twisted, the sword essence would move on the body that was constructed out of countless sword essences. Pure power passed through the layers as though it was a tide. Too powerful. Zhuemo's teeth were chattering. Even though he was in the life area, but in front of absolute power, he felt he was so minuscule. But he endured it, even if his teeth were chattering, his body shaking. He used all his power to keep his eyes open and on the dragon, not willing to miss any detail. Second Sherba's sword essence was the last one that he was facing, because it was the strongest sword essence out of the 5. Sect leader Sherba's sword essence was as heavy as a mountain, third Sherba's sword essence as sly as a fox, master sword essence as serene as a vine, and that unknown expert sword essence was unending like a formation. After experiencing the 4 sword essences, Zhuemo had thought he could face second Sherba's sword essence. But only now, facing it directly, did he understand why second Sherba's sword essence was at the center. Because it was the strongest and not just by a bit. Zhuemo could not understand how someone's sword essence could reach such a terrifying step. In the 5 sword essences, Zhuemo had thought he would be the most familiar with second Sherba's ice dragon sword essence. Now, he knew he was wrong and terribly wrong. He had never truly understood the ice dragon sword essence. He hadn't even touched the surface. Even the moonchime sound storm of the skyring moonchime formation, was worthless in front of second Sherwa's ice dragon sword essence. His legs were nailed to the ground. As long as he stayed within the life area, the dragon could not harm him. Even though he knew this, he still felt his courage quickly drain away. Stand your ground. In the next 10 days he continued to challenge the dragon every day. Even Wu Ling Sanren, who had created the formation, would not have thought that Zuo would use such a shameless tactic. No matter how wondrous the formation was, it was a formation and required Ling power to sustain itself. Zuo continuously challenging the dragon and causing the dragon to go into a rage quickly increased the drain of Ling power by the formation. Of course, if Zuo wanted to use this method to escape, then he would have to wait a few years. What Zuo was happy about was that as the Ling power of the Great Formation was expended, some places that were hidden were gradually exposed. Now, he was in even less of a rush. He continuously teased all 5 sword essences each day. For one, he could have made a better study and comprehend the sword essence. His other purpose was to run down the Ling power of the formation. No matter how talented he was just a Zhuji. Some of the higher-level transformations were far out of the range of his understanding and he could not learn it. But some of the lower and basic changes of the formation were more valuable to him. The sword essence was the same. There never was the best, only the most appropriate. It was like there was no time in the formation. He forgot time. It was like he had landed in a treasure trove. There were too many treasures waiting for him to dig up and discover. He became enchanted. Zuo's upper body was bare. As he looked around, his eyes were clear. He looked at the dragon nearby. The dragon was just as proud, but the sheen of the dragon was much dimmer than before. Suddenly, Zuo felt some reluctance. He had spent every day with the essence for more than half a year. Even though he knew it was not alive, Zuo still would miss it. Today, he decided to organize everything he had learned. It was time for him to leave the formation. Right now, the life area that Zuo was in had gone from 3 zhang to 10 zhang. This space was modified by what Zuo had comprehended about the formation. Having decided to make an end, Zuo was not in a hurry. He sat down in meditation, forgetting everything else. A long time later, he opened his eyes, the light inside a fraction brighter than before. The water drop sword was in front of him as he sunk deeply into thought. Half a year's worth of time, the changes to Wukong sword sects were enough to make people gape. The present Wukong sword sect was the largest sect in Dongfu. It had absorbed almost all the sects in Dongfu. It also squeezed its way into becoming one of the top 3 large sects in Sky Moonjia, clearly one of the new grand sections. 3 months ago, Wei Xing had come out of seclusion, and Luo Li had returned from the Sword Cave. The addition of the 2 people had increased the offensive power of Wukong sword sect. Following Xan Yen, they battled in all directions. Wukong sword sect's power expanded at astounding speed. All of Sky Moonjia's eyes were focused on this newly rising sect. If it was in the past, Wukong sword sect's conduct would have caused great resistance. Many other sects would have interfered. However, everyone was only watching, and no one was interfering because of one piece of news. The news that Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia had collapsed seemed to have grown wings as it passed through all of Sky Moonjia. Some small sects merged into Wukong sword sect of their own volition. It was much cooler under a large tree. No matter what, Wukong sword sect had 4 Jindan experts. Xan Yen had taken Wei Sheng and Luo Li to fight outside. Yen Lu was continuously traveling to the other sects, spreading Wukong sword sect's respects and desire for friendly relations. In charge of the whole plan was Pei Yuan Ran, who was terribly busy. Even Shifeng Rong had to come out of the Dan room to help Pei Yuan Ran. Just at this time, light streamed up at the back of Wukong Mountain. Chapter 167. The places are the same, the people are not. While walking along the path, he didn't see any people along the way. It wasn't until he had reached the mouth of the path that he saw 4 other disciples. However, Zuo didn't recognize any of them. What shocked him even more was all 4 of the disciples were in Juji, and one of them had an even deeper in cultivation than headed. Who are these people? Why had they come to the back of the mountain of his sect? Zhuemo was on his guard. When the 4 disciples saw Zhuemo, they first paused and then bowed simultaneously, calling out, "Greetings to Zhuo Shixiang." Zhuo Shixiang? Had the sect taken in new disciples recently? Zhuemo was puzzled but asked without showing a hint of confusion, "Everyone looks unfamiliar. Why did you all enter Wukong Sword Sect?" The person with the deepest cultivation among the 4 stepped forward and said respectfully, "We used to be Wei Sword Sect disciples. 2 months ago, we formally entered the sect and have received orders from the sect leader to guard the back mountain." Zhuemo's puzzlement increased upon hearing this. He asked curiously, "If you were Wei Sword Sect disciples, then why would you consider entering our sect?" The 4 exchanged looks and smiled. The leader explained. Shixiang was in seclusion and may not know the dramatic changes within the sect. Not just Wei Sword Sect, but almost half of the sects around Dongfu have merged into our sect. Zhuemo gaped. The 4 saw Zhuemo was blanking but didn't dare disturb him. They might all have nearly the same level of cultivation, but the difference in status was enormous. The sect leader wasn't known to be someone who was nepotistic, but it was unavoidable that the status of the original Wukong Sword Sect disciples would rise with their expansion. Even more, Zhuemo wasn't just any Wukong Sword Sect disciple, he was one of the core disciples. According to the other original Wukong Sword Sect disciples, Zhuemo's position was even above Luo Li Shixiang. They didn't dare to offend him. At the sword test conference, Zhuemo had become very famous. Everyone remembered his trademark zombie face. The 4 of them had recognized him with nothing more than a glance. Only now did they realize that the back of the mountain was Zhuemo's place of seclusion. From when they had been ordered to guard this place, they had been curious what was so special about the back of the mountain that the sect leader would send 4 people to guard it. At regular intervals, eldest Shiji Li Yingfeng would come, but still nothing was ever mentioned. As they stopped speaking, countless sword energies flew in from all over. At the front was sect leader Pei Yuan Ran and Shifeng Rong. The light of Zhuemo coming out of the formation had alarmed all of Wukong Mountain. When Pei Yuan Ran saw Zhuemo, his brows imperceptibly creased but resumed normal. At his side, Shifeng Rong had a happy expression. When the 4 people guarding the back mountain saw Pei Yuan Ran and Shifeng Rong, they were shocked and hurriedly bowed. The 4 of them were once again reconsidering the importance of Zhuemo to the elders. "You finally came out of seclusion. Not bad." Pei Yuan Ran warmly said, "Your master has been impatient. It's good that you came out." Shifeng Rong was extremely fond of this disciple that was full of talent but also a cause for headache. The rims of her eyes turned red. Zhuemo's nose instantly felt sore. He was very moved. He properly bowed, "Master." After talking for a while with Zhuemo, the sect leader left. There were too many things he had to do. Shifeng Rong accompanied Zhuemo back to his little west wind yard. Just as they reached the mouth of the valley, a ball of white shadow slammed into Zhuemo. Caught unaware, Zhuemo was thrown to the ground. "Silly bird." Silly bird nudged and snuggled with her head. Zhuemo scolded, "You silly bird." But inside, his heart was warmed. The little west wind yard did not seem different than before. There should have been people who came to clean. Having perceived Zhuemo's befuddlement, Shifeng Rong said with a slight smile, "At the beginning, Xiaogua came to clean every day. After, Xiaogua was sent to Sky Sound City, so she sent a few outer sect disciples to clean." Thinking about the timid apple face, Zhuemo felt a slight sense of loss. He asked, "How is Xiaogua's situation?" Shifeng Rong was clearly very satisfied with her other disciple. "Xiaogua's talents might not be as high as you guys, but she is extremely hardworking." Adding on that the sect has expanded quickly this half year and has many more resources, she has leveled up quickly. She's not far from Ningmai. The sect leader felt she needed to gain experience, so she was sent to manage Sky Moon City. "Eldest Shixiang? Luo Li Shixiang?" Zhuemo couldn't help but ask. Shifeng Rong said, "Your eldest Shixiang and Luo Li Shixiang originally started out with your second Shibua. Afterwards, to increase speed, They all led some of the other disciples and split up. It's a pity that we didn't know when you would come out of the formation, otherwise Li Yingfeng definitely would have waited a few more days before leaving. Your Yen Lishebwa needs people, so he also called your Li Yingfeng Shiji over. Zuomo's heart felt even more hollow. Who could have thought that everything had changed after staying in the formation for half a year? We've expanded this much? Zuomo couldn't help but ask. The other sects have not interfered? It's not just us that is expanding. This half year, everyone has been expanding. Worry came onto Shi Fengrong's face. The situation in Bloody Sky Metropolis Jie is becoming worse. Everyone is worried. In these troubling times, everyone that has the power to expand will expand. Only by consolidating our strength can there be some hope for survival. Sky Moon Jie is not far away from Bloody Sky Metropolis Jie. Everyone is panicking. During such dangerous times, naturally it requires that special measures be used. We cannot be kind and generous. The sect leader is hoping that we can finish organizing before the bad news comes. The situation is this bad. Zuomo was very shocked. The worry on Shi Fengrong's face became even heavier. She hesitated but still spoke. Originally, since you came out of the formation, you should rest a while. But the situation is serious, so there are some things that I have to say to you. Do not slack off now. The sect is not like it was in the past. We have 7 Jindan, about 30 Ningmai, and more than 200 Juji disciples right now. Zuomo seemed to know what Master wanted to say, but for some unknown reason, he was very calm. Our sect has expanded too quickly. Even though it is out of helplessness, but there are many weaknesses. The sect is not as harmonious as it was before. Speaking of that, she couldn't help but sigh. You have to work hard and enter Ningmai as early as possible. This disciple understands. Zuomo knew that Master was looking out for him. Shi Fengrong said a few more things before leaving. The sky was dark. Zuomo sat on the rooftop, a sound tablet by his side. The noise of the sound tablet was the same. Silly Bird was at the side. She seemed to feel Zuomo's mood and didn't make noise. After entering meditation from before, Pu Yao still hadn't moved. Luckily, there was no change in the sea of flames, no change in the gravestone, and no change in Pu Yao sitting on the gravestone. Pu Yao was meditating, eldest Xixiang, Luo Li Xixiang, Shaogua, and the others were not here. Sitting on the rooftop, he looked at the sky. The light of flying swords were multiple times more frequent than before, extremely busy. Yet all this prosperity made Zuomo feel this place was now very unfamiliar and very cold. Suddenly, something pulled the corner of his clothing. Turning around, he found it was Silly Bird. What? Silly Bird? Silly Bird flapped down the roof. Zuomo's eyes landed where Silly Bird was standing. Wasn't that the entrance to the rock room? Zuomo had always carefully concealed the entrance to the rock room. He had especially set up illusory formations around it. No one had found it. Zuomo suddenly felt interested and burrowed into the room. Entering, a damp and cold air rushed out. Sweeping the stone room, Zuomo suddenly had a joyful expression. Black gold worm. The black gold WM also found Zuomo, turning into a streak of black light to land on Zuomo's shoulder. Seeing this little guy, Zuomo's mood lifted as though he was meeting an old friend. He finally remembered that the black gold worm liked to stay on the Ling vein inside the stone room. He had long forgotten about it. Putting the black gold worm on his palm and inspecting it, Zuomo felt even happier. Compared to before, the black gold worm was of a higher grade and more intelligent. What had this guy eaten? When his eyes landed on the pockmarked Ling vein, he understood. It was as he had expected. When he approached the Ling vein, he found he could not detect any Ling energy. There was a small yet extremely deep hole in the ground. When Zuomo tested with his consciousness, he found it was at least several dozen zhang deep. It definitely was due to the black gold worm. The Dan that had been nurturing by the Ling spring probably also landed in this little guy's stomach. I really didn't see that you really have some skill. Zuomo smiled at the black gold worm. Taking the black gold worm out of the stone room, Zhuamo's mood was much better. Wukong Hall Pei Yuan Ran and Shi Feng Rong were discussing matters. Pei Yuan Ran smiled and said, I just received a flying sword message from 3rd Shitty. Good news, Heart Lake Sword Sect has agreed to give the Desolate Wood Reef to us. Shi Feng Rong also showed a sliver of joy. If that's the case, that's great. The Desolate Wood Reef is right beside the Jie River to Little Mountain Jie. We now have another escape route, but what did Heart Lake Sword Sect want in return? They wanted Kuei City. I agreed. Kuei City isn't of much use to us. To exchange for Desolate Wood Reef, it's profitable. Pei Yuan Ran said decisively. Shi Feng Rong nodded in agreement. I'm planning to let Zhuamo go to the Desolate Wood Reef, Pei Yuan Ran suddenly said. Why? Shi Feng Rong suddenly stood up, her face angry. Zhuamo just came out of the formation, and you are sending him to such wilderness. I understand clearly just how barren the Desolate Wood Reef is. We've been there before and I know it. I don't agree. Pei Yuan Ran rubbed his brow in helplessness, his other hand motioning to Shi Feng Rong. Don't be so impatient. Wait for me to finish. Shi Feng Rong snorted coldly, not speaking. Pei Yuan Ran really had no methods of dealing with his shimmy. Desolate Wood Reef might be very poor, but shimmy also knows how important it is to us. Otherwise, why would we have needed 3rd Shitty to personally go to Heart Lake Sword Sect? This kind of important location, I wouldn't feel safe if it wasn't on our people's hands. Wei Sheng and the others have their duties. Tell me, who can I send? Pei Yuan Ran spread his hands and asked Shi Feng Rong. Shi Feng Rong sneered. Don't use these righteous excuses. Isn't it just that you saw that Zhuamo isn't in Ningmai and his sword essence hasn't reached heart-turn-sword essence? This matter, I definitely won't agree. Pei Yuan Ran grimaced. What do you want me to say? Keeping Zhuamo in the sect, would that be good for him? You also know what the situation is like inside the sect. Do we have the time to protect him? Do you have it? I don't either. Wei Sheng and the others are not here, no one can help him, is that really so good for him? Seeing Shi Feng Rong's face relax, he continued patiently, Desolate Wood Reef might be out of the way and poor, but it is very safe. It is behind us, therefore it will be on our path for retreat. Zhuamo going there, he might suffer, but his life will not be in danger. If the situation is really bad and we need to retreat, we will definitely go through Desolate Wood Reef. With our current circumstances, other than ensuring his survival, what more do you want? Shi Feng Rong didn't say anything. She knew that sect leader Shixiang was right. After struggling for a while, she raised her head and gritted her teeth. On the matter of resources, we can't shortchange him. All right. Pei Yuan Ran answered easily. Chapter 168, Desolate Wood Reef, Shixiang. Desolate Wood Reef is just up ahead, a Shitty said excitedly as he pointed forwards. Zhuamo nodded. He gazed into the distance and a lonely island had appeared in the distance. Everyone was slightly excited. After flying continuously for 2 months, everyone sighed a breath of relief as they quickly neared their destination. Seeing the Desolate Wood Reef, Zhuamo finally understood why the sect had been so interested in such an out-of-the-way place. Desolate Wood Reef was positioned in a deep expanse of water, the edge of the Jie River. If one wanted to pass into Little Mountain Jie, they had to pass through this location. The endless ocean was borderless and required long flights. Flying to this place was the limit of endurance for most. Because of this, the Desolate Wood Reef's location was strategically important. It was necessary to rest at this area and regain strength in preparation for passing through the Jie River. If it wasn't for the fact that Heart Lake Sword Sect was at the opposite end of Sky Moon Jie and their sect had several Jie Rivers, they never would have let go of such an important location as the Desolate Wood Reef. Even so, the sect had paid a great price. But this place really was desolate. As they flew closer and the island came into view, Zhuamo couldn't help but sigh. He didn't have any anger towards the sect for sending him to the Desolate Wood Reef. He was actually very happy. The state of the sect was not harmonious, and all the disciples that he was familiar with were no longer present. Such timing had made it wiser to leave. Desolate Wood Reef was far away from the sect, so any conflict inside the sect wouldn't reach this place. He was happy to be so free. Just at this time, several Xiozha flew up out of the island. "Are you the Shixiang from Wukong Sword Sect?" shouted one of them. "Yes." Zuemo bowed. He was preparing to take out the sect token, when the other person smiled and waved his hand. "Zua Shixiang coming personally, I don't need to see the token." "Shixiang knows me?" Zuemo was slightly surprised. The other smiled. The person said, "The recording jade scrolls of the battle between brothers Zua and Chaoan may be rare, but this one is lucky enough to possess one of them. I recognized brother Zua from the recording." Zuemo finally understood. He humbly bowed with folded hands. "Shixiang is too kind. I thought that you guys would arrive soon. We've already cleaned everything up. From today on, the Desolate Wood Reef will be under Brothers Zua's care. This jade scroll contains some of what we have discovered about this island over the years. I hope it can help Brother Zua. Goodbye." The other bowed with folded hands in salute to Zuemo and then left. He didn't seem to want to spend another moment on the island. The other people also bowed and then left. The exchange had been so fast that it was surprising to Zuemo. The people who had accompanied him here felt they had been given much face. Even the disciples of Heart Lake Sword Sect knew the name of Zua Shixiang. They felt honored to be connected. The Wukong Sword Sect had just expanded, and compared to those older sects, there was still a gap in the attitudes of the disciples. "Let's head down." Zuemo looked and urged Silly Bird to land. The other people followed tightly after him. The amount of investment that Heart Lake Sword Sect had put into the Desolate Wood Reef had been very limited. Other than a few stone buildings on the island, there was nothing. The shitty that came with Zuemo did not say anything, but their faces had become much dimmer. They found the place was much more isolated than they had originally imagined. Zuemo did not care. Stepping on to the Desolate Wood Reef, he found the island was better than he had thought. "We are going to make a home here." Zuemo glanced at them and said calmly, "Everyone first rest for a few days before starting." After flying for more than 2 months, even Silly Bird was slightly less energetic. The steeds of the other shitty were even worse off. Zuemo took out a bottle of Lingdan. This was the energy dan that he had prepared previously. The grade was not very high, just second grade. But since it was easy to make and the cost was low, he had made an entire batch. Silly Bird liked to eat it and would often munch on them as if they were beans. They were pretty effective at recovering its energy. As expected, after eating 7 or 8, Silly Bird resumed her usual boastful and proud attitude. Her neck was arched high, her upper body unmoving, and her 2 long, dainty bird legs elegantly stepping out on the beach. The shitty enviously looked at Silly Bird. Even someone blind could see handsomeness of Silly Bird. They copied Zuemo, taking out energy dan to feed to their steeds. But they were still quite reluctant. The most they gave was 2 pills. Before departure, Zuemo had given each person a bottle with about 10 pills in each. In this time that the prices of materials were rising, the bottle of energy dan was not cheap. They found that following Zua Shixiang didn't seem to be so bad, at least it wouldn't be unprofitable. Even more, Zua Shixiang was a core disciple. Those whom Zuemo had picked this time were all disciples from minor sects that hadn't been in the sect for more than 1 month. They had just joined and had not been pulled into the factions within the sect. As those disciples that had some fame, he didn't take any of them. Ningmai disciples, which ones would obey him? The people he had picked were all in Juji with foundations as production Xiozha. After resting for 2 days, everyone had basically recovered. Zuemo called everyone over. Starting from today, for a very long period of time, we will be staying at this place where even the birds won't shit. Zuemo's language was coarse, but everyone felt a deep empathy with his words. However, because this place is isolated, no one will disturb us here. It can be a place of peace. Right now, the sect is a mess, and even I find it troublesome. For you, it would be a dream to think you could have avoided it. All of us here are production shio, so think about the sect. Is there a place that will allow you to peacefully produce? This place might be isolated, but there is no conflict. To us, it is a very good place. Desolate? We can change it ourselves. I'll state the rules first. On the desolate wood reef, whoever creates ling fields will get to plant in them. Whoever plants will get what they planted. I won't take a portion, the sect will not take anything. Also, the sect benefits that you are due will not change. Really? There was excitement on some people's faces. Originally, they had felt this place was isolated and had been very unwilling. Hearing Zuemo say so, they became excited. They were all production shio, and none among them were interested in fighting and killing. It might be hard to create ling fields, but if they made them, what they planted belonged to them. The sect would not take a portion. It had to be said that the portion the sect usually took in rent for ling fields was extremely high. Zuemo shrugged his shoulders. As long as I am here, there will not be a problem. But if the sect switches people, then I can't do a thing. The people believed Zuemo even more when he said that. At least Zhuo Shixiang was not over-exaggerating. Poor land? It was only a matter of effort for Xiozha. Production Shio were hardworking and hardy. Seeing everyone was becoming motivated, Zuemo decided to keep eating while the fire was hot. Time is Jingshi. Everyone, you don't want to waste Jingshi. I have a plan here. Zuemo knew that time was short. There was not a lot of time left for him. In the past, Desolate Wood Reef was neglected, but as the situation worsened, the position of the Desolate Wood Reef would quickly become essential. Relatively speaking, Little Mountain Jie was even more isolated. It only had 2 Jie rivers, even less than Sky Moon Jie. The situations was worsening and the amount of Xiozha that would pass through Desolate Wood Reef would increase greatly. Having personally made the trip, Zuemo felt that the position of the Desolate Wood Reef was even better geographically. 2 months of traveling, it took almost 1 month of flying over the endless ocean. Supposedly, there were vicious and dangerous water beasts underwater, so few people would choose to travel on the water. Zuemo could not imagine just how idiotic the people of Heart Lake Sword Sect were. Heavens, possessing such a good place yet not using it. In reality, his thinking had gone askew. Little Mountain Jie only had a Jie river towards Sky Moon Jie and one towards Sky Water Jie. Sky Moon Jie was not as prosperous as Sky Water Jie, so there was rarely any people that passed through to Little Mountain Jie. The Desolate Wood Reef was too far away from Heart Lake Sword Sect. It was only a stop, so naturally, they did not try to manage it with any significant effort. Zuemo had his own thoughts. Even though Little Mountain Jie was more isolated, it was also further away from Bloody Sky Metropolis Jie. In other words, if the current situation really worsened, retreating through Little Mountain Jie then onwards to Sky Water Jie was not a bad choice. That was his plan. He estimated that after some more time, there would continuously be people going through the Jie River to Little Mountain Jie. It wasn't so easy to travel through a Jie River. The shortest amount of time it would take was several months. Longer trips could possibly take years. The Desolate Wood Reef was the only supply point before entering the Jie River. That was an opportunity. Want to resupply? Alright. Passage fee, accommodation fee, resupplying fee, birds will be plucked clean. He had decided. Even if it was a mosquito passing by, he was going to squeeze out 3 drops of blood. In any case, the sect in the short term definitely had no attention to spare on him. Looking objectively from outside, he finally understood. The sect might look strong now, but before the sect leader could assimilate the newly merged factions, the sect would only remain superficially strong. In reality, it was weak internally. The sect leader definitely could see it, but was yet to be seen if there was enough time for him to do anything about it. That was up to the heavens. Zuemo shook his head and threw those nonsense thoughts to the back of his mind. A problem even the sect leader couldn't solve. It wasn't necessary for him to waste his thoughts on it. He decided to manage his own little domain. The Desolate Wood Reef was a treasure. Thinking of being able to sit and receive Jingshi was great, but this all required that he had enough strength to support it. This was what he was directing everyone to do now. Each person had been given a jade scroll from Zhuo Shixiang with the jobs assigned to them. There were a variety of jobs that were very weird. Ling plant farmers were requested to plant certain ling grasses and herbs at certain areas on the island. The animal keepers were to put some of the worms and beasts they raised in certain locations. Zhuemo had even drawn out the areas they needed to raise them. The most common task was to dig holes and canals. Almost everyone felt it hard to understand. The humidity on the desolate wood reef was very rich. The effect of water element spells like Little Art of Cloud and Rain were magnified. They didn't really need to dig any waterways. Also, the canals that Zhuo Shixiang had requested them to dig crisscrossed the entire island, all of them connected to each other. What did Zhuo Shixiang want to do? After a while, some of the more sensitive Xiozhi discovered that Zhuo Shixiang had not appeared for 2 days. Where had Zhuo Shixiang gone? Chapter 169, Wealth Coming from the Skies. Zhuemo followed closely behind the black goldworm. He held the water-drop sword, his eyes continuously sweeping the surroundings with caution. The armored black worm ran very quickly. Zhuemo was gleeful as he followed. Though Black was running so cheerfully, then the island definitely had ling veins or some great treasure. He had originally assumed that the desolate wood reef was a barren island. Looking at it now, it seemed to hold some surprises. The place they had arrived at was a dense forest, and in the middle, there was a lake filled with black-colored water. Lil Black seemed to be extremely afraid of the Blackwater Lake and rapidly passed it by. Zhuemo examined the Blackwater Lake in slight surprise. The lake was not very large, about 10 mu or so. The water of the pond was as black as ink. It was a dead place, no grass growing beside it, and contained only large patches of pale white rock. Corrupted land. For some reason, these 2 words naturally floated to the top of Zhuemo's mind. The Blackwater Lake looked like it was dead. There were no animal tracks along the shores. It seemed to exude unluckiness. He remembered the jade scroll that the Heart Lake Sword Sect disciple had given him mentioned this lake. The Blackwater Lake was very dangerous, and it was recommended to stay away. He didn't have time to study the lake right now. He sped up to keep in step with Lil Black. Among the woods, Lil Black was like a gust of wind, only a black shadow could be seen. If Zhuemo did not have a mental connection with Lil Black, he would have lost track of it a long time ago. Detecting that Lil Black's speed had increased a fraction, Zhuemo hurriedly sped up as well. Lil Black suddenly crept inside a crack in a nearby clearing. Zhuemo grimaced when he saw this 2-finger-wide crack. Yet his water-drop sword in his hand did not hesitate, turning into a stream of light and twisting rapidly in the air as a blue shadow before it suddenly drilled downward. Boom! Broken rocks scattered and a hole wide enough to allow Zhuemo to enter appeared in front of him. Zhuemo waved his hand, and the water-drop sword flew back into his hand. Bending down, he entered the hole and the tunnel widened in front of him. This place was a natural cave. Not far away, the black goldworm was waiting for Zhuemo. Seeing Zhuemo, it made a sound, turned and ran. Zhuemo refocused and hurriedly followed. The darkness did not affect Lil Black at all, and Zhuemo's consciousness was strong enough to allow everything to be perceived by his mind. Advancing inside the tunnel, Zhuemo was able to feel that he was continuously moving deeper underground. Along the way, his flying sword had been used to break open quite a few blockages. Up until now, he hadn't found any traces of other people. This made him even more excited. After walking for more than an hour, when he walked by another corner, Zhuemo was stunned by seeing in front of him. Large swathes of completely red lava flowed, slowly bubbling. His vision was completely filled with its red glow. The cavern was like a world of crimson, changing and twisting with each wave of heat. The air was stained with the smell of sulfur. The lake of boiling lava was about 3 mu in size. Rocks from the surrounding areas were constantly falling and disappearing into it. But after a while, the lava at the borders would cool, forming rock again and mending the holes. His gaze landed on the black goldworm. At some unknown time, Lil Black had crawled on top of a red-colored rock and started to nibble. Zhuemo's pupils suddenly shrunk and he was overjoyed. Crimson fire rock. He couldn't stop himself from approaching and picking up a red-colored rock from the ground. The volcanic red rock was not jade yet similar to jade. It was a very strong and pure shade of red, hot to the touch like scorching hot metal. If Zuemo hadn't wrapped Ling power around his hand would have been cooked to the bone. The rock contained extremely rich fire element power. 4th grade Crimson Fire Rock. At this time, he wanted to laugh. Who would have thought that this isolated island would have such a treasure? A circle of crimson red rock grew around the rim of the lava lake. All this crimson fire rock alone was enough to make his trip to the desolate wood reef worth it. Without another word, he started to collect the crimson fire rock, not leaving even one piece. The crimson fire rock was arranged in a particular pattern. All of them grew in the area closest to the lava, forming a belt around the lava lake. These crimson fire rocks had been tempered over countless months and years, and the impurities inside had been melted away so they were very pure. In the 60 or so pieces of crimson fire rock, most were 3rd grade. The number of 4th grade crimson fire rock reached 6 pieces. This was an astounding amount of wealth. Zuemo was very satisfied. He was dizzy from receiving such a windfall of wealth. To reward Lil Black, he even took out a piece of 4th grade crimson fire rock for it to chew on. Lil Black instantly abandoned the 3rd grade crimson fire rock that he had half eaten and leapt towards the 4th grade crimson fire rock as though its butt was on fire. This piece of crimson fire rock was not big, just slightly larger than his thumb. Black ate it like it was a cracker, crunch crunch. A 4th grade crimson fire rock was gone just like that. Finished eating. Black suddenly became bright red all over like it was being heated, lying there motionlessly. Zuemo was alarmed. The connection between him and Lil Black was broken. He carefully held Lil Black on his hand. Lil Black seemed like a piece of crimson fire rock at this moment, its temperature abnormally high. He carefully observed for a while using his consciousness. Finally, after making sure that the black gold worm hadn't died, he instantly sighed in relief. After staying in the formation for half a year, Silly Bird and Lil Black were not just steed and lingworm to Zuemo, but more like his friends. Zuemo guessed that Lil Black had consumed too much fire element power today, causing indigestion. "You glutton," he muttered as he put Lil Black into his ring. After cleaning up the crimson fire rock, Zuemo finally calmed down. He reassessed this underground lava lake. Even standing on the shore, he could feel the rich fire element power. This place was a treasure. Zuemo had already started to ponder how he could use the lava lake. His consciousness made a few rounds around the lake and did not find anything strange. He had originally intended to find Ling veins and hadn't expected an earth-fire lava lake. This was outside of his plans. However, even if it was unexpected, this lava lake was still of great use. Zuemo stood at his spot, thinking for a moment before starting to act. All kinds of materials appeared on his hands. The stores of the sect had been opened for his trip to the desolate wood reef. He naturally wasn't polite, and swept through until Master couldn't bear it anymore. Compared to before, the resources were on completely different levels. There were all kinds of high-level materials in the stores that dazzled Zuemo's eyes. Zuemo might be lazy in general, but he would never slack off on anything related to his life. A flip of the hand, and a two-handled hornless dragon copper cauldron appeared. The hornless dragon pattern on the cauldron was a faint red, its coiled body carved to appear like flames. Zuemo gently threw it and the copper cauldron appeared steadily at a place on the shore. He flipped his hand again. It was another copper cauldron exactly the same as the last one. Another toss, the cauldron was planted at another spot. In one go, Zuemo had tossed out 7 two-handled hornless dragon copper cauldrons which all landed at places equidistant to the lava lake. The 7 two-handled hornless dragon copper cauldrons were fine items in the 3rd grade. When Zuemo had taken all 7 while shopping at the sect stores, the face of the disciple in charge turned green instantly. Zuemo's eyes became serious. His hands blooming, he started to walk along the lake, talismans and materials flying from his hands. 2 hours later, he wiped the sweat off his forehead. A spectacular display of all kinds of materials were placed along the edges of the lava lake. He released a breath, his hands moving like lightning. He activated spells that created streams of light which entered the materials. The entire process continued for 6 whole hours. When the last spell was finished, it was like Suemo had lost all energy. He sat down on his butt, his entire body soaked in sweat. He forced down the deathly exhaustion in his body, folded his legs, and quickly entered meditation. A few hours later, he opened his eyes, fully recovered. It can only be like this now. Seeing the formation he had just finished, he wasn't very satisfied. The lava lake contained extremely rich fire element energy and a thread of earth fire. It was a wonderful natural cauldron. No matter if it was Dan making or forging, it was a necessity, so he did not spare the expense in using the 7 third-grade 2-handle hornless dragon copper cauldrons to set up a 4-turn formation. The fire element power reached an astounding height. The energy alone would be enough to accomplish half the work whether it was used for Dan making or forging. The formation would naturally move on its own. The 7 copper cauldrons were like 7 whirlpools, furiously absorbing the fire element power from the lava lake. After 4 turns, it turned to a thread of fire that flew into the air above the lava lake. When the 7 threads of fire intersected in the air, a serene blue flame bloomed in the air. Suemo finally had a satisfied expression. The formation was not perfect, but the flame was already very good. He took out a thin copper hoop from the ring which was covered in all kinds of seals. Raising his hand, he threw the copper hoop into the flame. The flame suddenly grew, enveloping the copper ring. The copper ring was abnormally silent inside the fire. Suemo put around 7 layers of Jinji around the shores of the lava lake before he stopped. He looked at the copper ring suspended in the flame. The original yellow-red flame now revealed an extremely thin thread of red. Suemo showed some anticipation on his face before he left. Coming out of the cave, Suemo carefully laid out some Jinji over the mouth to prevent others from entering. The disciples of Wukong Sword Sect had worked on their construction projects for quite a few days before they finished the tasks set out in their Jade Scrolls. Suemo did not explain very much, but everyone still reliably finished their tasks. What Suemo had picked were all production shioja, and they were mostly docile. However, everyone was very curious what Shixiang planned on doing. When the Shixiang that had disappeared for a few days reappeared, everyone went to crowd around him and reported their progress. Suemo focused and scanned everyone's tasks before he had a satisfied expression. "Everyone, thanks for your hard work." Suemo clapped his hand. "Everyone gets a bottle of Energy Dan, rest for a few days." Even though they didn't know what Shixiang was doing, everyone felt satisfied with gaining a bottle of Energy Dan. After receiving the reward, they all went to rest. At this very moment, a sword light suddenly flashed on the horizon. The sword light was extremely quick. The person seemed to have spotted the desolate wood reef. The light's direction changed and headed towards the desolate wood reef. Suemo and his compatriots instantly became nervous. They are tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.